Prologue. Somewhere over Fort Bragg, North Carolina, present day. The roar of CH-47. Chinook rotors shredded the late afternoon silence, carving through the heavy summer air above the sprawling pine forests of Fort Bragg. The twin engines pulsed in synchrony, deep pounding thuds like the heartbeat of a giant mechanical beast. Below, cicadas went mute. Trees swayed under rotor wash. Dust kicked up in miniature cyclones that vanished as quickly as they appeared. The sky was turning the color of an old bruise, amber fading into a navy dusk. Inside the Chinook's belly, Bravo platoon of the 1st Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment rode the storm. The men and women of Bravo were armed to the teeth and mentally dialed in, flying the final leg of Operation Blacklight, a complex joint force readiness exercise blending direct action raids, drone warfare, and electronic suppression. On paper, this was training. In reality, it felt like prep for something worse. Captain Jack Ridley stood mid-bay, tall and square-shouldered, helmeted head scanning across the team. 34 years old, his jaw tight, his hands still, Ridley radiated a calm authority earned not just in the field, but through years of programming battlefield simulations and dissecting enemy command structures. Before the uniform, he had graduated MIT with a master's in computer science, specializing in AI, modeling for combat scenarios. DARPA had wanted him, so had Google. He chose war. He had always felt more at ease in complexity, in chaos. There was something clean about war. Brutal, yes, but honest. Systems either worked or failed. Orders were followed or they weren't. It didn't matter how good you were in a meeting if you couldn't clear a room with precision. Every operation stripped life down to instinct, reflex, and mission. To Ridley's right, Sergeant First Class Maria Vasquez checked her XM250 light machine gun, threading a belt of SIG .277 Fury rounds through its feed tray. She was wiry and lethal, Delta-trained, a decade of war behind her, and the only person in the cabin with a confirmed kill using a toothbrush. Her eyes flicked across her teammates with mechanical precision, always calculating. Her gloves were torn at the knuckle from previous training days. She didn't care. The newer weapons hit harder but demanded more discipline. She leaned into Ridley. Last real-world op in Syria, our drone pilot was feeding bad coordinates. If Booker's system hiccups today, I'm bringing him back in 2 pieces. Noted, Ridley said. Across from her, Specialist Jamal Houdini Booker hunched over a ruggedized tablet, patching into drone feeds, satellite comms, and spoofing OP4 radio signals before they even landed. His fingers danced like he was composing music. A geek in body armor, he was the team's signal warfare genius. Booker could write Python scripts that hijacked local drones mid-air. He often did. He was also the only one who had successfully taught a neural net to play taps with glitch pop samples. For him, war was just a very dangerous LAN party. "Sir," Booker called without looking up. "Uplink stable. Drone eyes on Ridge's rear. Thermal confirms 4 hostiles near the water tower. I've layered a decoy signal loop to scramble their recon relay." "Nice work," Ridley said. "Maintain lock and prep payload profiles." Corporal Vic Tran sat near the ramp, silently checking the fire control optic on his XM7 rifle. A new weapon, shorter, heavier, and far more powerful than the old M4. Tran loved it. A shadow of a man with the silence of a monk, he rarely spoke unless it mattered. He could shoot a man through a window 3 blocks away and go back to reading tactical manuals between firefights. No one knew where Tran came from. He just appeared in the unit one day and started breaking shooting records. Then there was Corporal Nate Henderson, the breacher. Built like a linebacker, he was wrapping det cord around his forearm like it was rosary. He'd once taken a door down, using only a crowbar and spite. 10 minutes out, he said. "Birds flying smoother than my last Tinder date." Vasquez snorted. "Hope this one doesn't end with an IED in the glove box." Booker smirked without looking up. Check his record. Last girl tried to exfil out a bathroom window. "Probably after seeing his stash of breach putty and Red Bulls," Vasquez added. Ridley allowed a grin, brief and tight. "Clock starts in 5. Final checks." Above, the cockpit lights dimmed as Warrant Officer Mason adjusted course. The Chinook tilted slightly to starboard. The mission was simple. Land near Corsica Ridge, a simulated insurgent stronghold mocked up in the Bragg backcountry. Execute a lightning raid on enemy command nodes, jam their comms, extract hostages, and exfil clean. But every gut in the cabin felt otherwise. Ridley had seen the classified brief, knew that Corsica Ridge was a testbed for something else entirely. The electronic warfare scenarios weren't just simulations. They were mimicking real disruptions from recent joint signals intercepted near Basra and somewhere off the coast of Tartus. Operation Blacklight was a dry run for a scenario none of them wanted to face: electronic first strike on a NATO asset. Booker muttered into his headset, picking up faint thermal ghosts near the mock fuel dump. DevGru might have stashed a counter-snipe unit. Recommend we sweep it first. Logged, Ridley said. Tran, adjust Overwatch to grid D7 after insertion. Tran gave a single nod. Blacklight command to Bravo Actual came through the comms. Simulated op begins in 5 mics. Expect DevGru acting as Op4. Live jamming environment. Prepare for urban assault and EW engagement. Grid ST4 is hot. Copy command, Ridley replied. Bravo out. He turned to his squad. Corsica Ridge isn't playtime. DevGru's bored, and they've rigged RFID-triggered traps and drone defense nets. Vasquez, entry sweep. Henderson, stack left. Booker, eyes on RF spectrum. Tran, Overwatch on north wall. Booker glanced up. Still running 2019 packet encryption on those RFIDs. Procurement's been busy issuing another round of DEI guidelines instead of updating firmware. Don't get comfortable, Vasquez said. If they're bored, they'll be dirty. Tran finally spoke. CENTCOM chatter says we're Gulf-bound after this. Tehran posturing again. Carrier group rerouted. Drones repositioned out of Al Udeid. Ridley nodded. Israeli airstrike hit Hezbollah depots last night. Iran responded with a warning. Last week they said they'd target U.S. bases if Israel made a move. Evacuation started, Booker added. Embassy in Baghdad down to skeleton staff. Marines are back in Bahrain. Oman just confirmed nuclear talks resumed. The brass are tense. Henderson chuckled. Well, if we're headed to the Gulf, I hope someone tells my girlfriend before she remarries. Vasquez shook her head. She'd already updated her dating profile. The laughter was nervous but real. Gallows humor was their currency. It kept the fear at bay. Then the Chinook shuddered. HUDs blinked static. Ridley frowned. Report! Mason's voice came low and tense. GPS drift. Altimeter reset. Map overlay not matching topography. Instruments are, uncertain. Abort vector? Ridley asked. Negative. Birds flying. But terrain match shows farmland. No roads, no lights. Skies off. Horizon curve changed. Ridley stepped to the side hatch. Pulled open the window. The sky shimmered. Like heat mirages rippling through oil, waves of distortion rose across the horizon. Shapes twisted. Colors bent. Time seemed to hesitate. The horizon pulsed once. Then again. The Chinook's cabin temperature dropped suddenly by 3 degrees. Frost crept across the corners of Booker's screen. Unnatural. Booker stared into his tablet. Everything's dead. Even fallback satellite links. We're flying through electromagnetic soup. I'm getting bleed from somewhere. Foreign signals. Maybe even Morse. External interference? Vasquez asked. It's like something's leaking into us. Ridley felt it too, a pressure in his ears, as if altitude was rising without motion. Static buzzed through the air, a low hum that pressed into the sinuses. Then Vasquez shouted, Sir, look! Below them, parachutes bloomed. Dozens. Not the tight aerodynamic tactical chutes of the 21st century, but wide, circular canvas canopies drifting over open fields. Troopers hung beneath them like ghosts. Ridley squinted. M1 Garands, canvas webbing, round helmets. Jesus Christ, Henderson said. Is that the 82nd? Tran confirmed what everyone already feared. World War II gear, Normandy issue. Those are American paratroopers. June 44. The Chinook bucked violently. HUDs died. Comms turned to static. Booker's tablet went dark. Ridley felt his stomach drop. The sense of weightlessness came not from altitude, but from unreality. This couldn't be happening. But it was. Brace, Ridley roared. The sky cracked, and Bravo fell into his Chapter 1. The Chinook slammed into a hedgerow with a teeth-rattling crash, rotors chewing earth and tree limbs like an angry god. The bird groaned in protest as the massive rear ramp collapsed under its own weight. Smoke hissed from the exhaust nacelles. Sparks danced through the open cabin like fireflies from hell. Ridley hit the deck hard, elbow first, weapon slung across his chest. His HUD blinked once and died for good. "Everyone out! Defensive positions! Now!" Vasquez and Henderson were already moving, hauling Booker and Tran with them. The squad spilled out into a field soaked with dew and shadowed by the twisted silhouettes of unfamiliar buildings. Ridley scanned left, then right. No cell towers, no power lines, no streetlights, just open countryside, rolling hills, and rows of darkened stone farmhouses. "Where the hell are we?" Booker muttered, clutching his dead tablet like a lifeline. Ridley ignored the question. He was asking himself the same thing. Night vision was worthless now. Whatever anomaly had dropped them here had fried everything electronic. His radio was a paperweight. The GPS, dead. Even the backup compass was spinning slowly like a drunk trying to dance. They moved in a wedge pattern, weapons up. No one talked. Even Henderson was quiet. The squad reached a nearby hedgerow, thick with vines and dew-slick leaves. Tran went prone, scanning with iron sights. Ridley crouched beside him and peered out. They saw them. Paratroopers. Dozens of them scattered across a nearby pasture, assembling in small groups. But these weren't 21st century Rangers. They wore M1942 jump uniforms, carried Garans and Thompsons, and bore patches that Ridley had only seen in museums. The Screaming Eagle of the 101 St. Airborne. Ridley swore under his breath. "We're in Normandy, D-Day." Booker knelt beside him. "Time travel?" "I don't know. Wormhole, freak accident, quantum anomaly. Take your pick." "Not buying it." "Neither am I," Ridley said. "But we adapt." More parachutes drifted down in the distance, some caught in trees, some tangled in fences. They were smack in the middle of one of the most chaotic nights in modern warfare. "Vasquez, status!" Ridley barked. She jogged over. "Perimeter secure. Henderson's placing det cord along the wreck. We can blow it if we need to." "Tran, any movement?" Tran's eyes didn't leave his sights. One patrol. East, 3 men, German helmets. Ridley made a decision. No engagement unless fired upon. We blend. We observe. We survive. The squad buried their gear under the foliage. Rucksacks, tablets, NVGs. Anything that would scream, "not from this century." They stripped to basics. Rifles slung, vests tight. Vasquez tied her hair under a canvas wrap. Booker pulled mud over the plastic of his gloves. Within minutes, they no longer looked like time travelers. They looked like ghosts. A distant explosion echoed across the valley. Then another. "It's starting," Ridley said. He remembered every detail from his academy lectures, every satellite photo, every film reel. The Normandy invasion, Operation Overlord, the largest amphibious assault in human history. They were behind enemy lines before the first Higgins boats touched sand. Booker exhaled. "What do we do?" Ridley's eyes swept the dark countryside. "We find the 101st. We embed. We do what we're trained to do. Assist, adapt, and survive. Until we figure out how to get home." "Sir," Tran said. "Movement. German patrol. Same 3. Closing." Ridley glanced to Vasquez. "Silencers." They moved like shadows through the hedgerow, the thick branches muffling the sound of boots. Vasquez took point, her rifle steady. Henderson flanked left, his massive frame somehow invisible in the dark. They reached a break in the brush and froze. 3 Wehrmacht soldiers, rifles slung, cigarettes glowing red in the dark. Laughing. Arguing. Ridley didn't understand the words, but he didn't need to. 3 shots, he whispered. The rifles coughed. Thump, thump, thump. The bodies dropped. Tran moved to confirm. "Clear," Ridley exhaled. "Strip them. Weapons, ID, uniforms. We might need disguises." The squad worked fast, methodical. No celebration, no hesitation. The wind shifted. Distant artillery thundered from the coast. The horizon glowed faintly orange. Vasquez looked up. "We're part of it now, aren't we?" Ridley nodded. "We just joined World War II." Chapter 2. They moved under a canopy of stars using the hedgerows for cover, a living maze carved from thick earth and twisted brush. The smell of churned soil and burning oil hung in the damp night air. The moon had dipped behind low clouds, casting the world into a velvet darkness. Ridley led from the front, his instincts honed sharp from dozens of real-world raids in the Middle East. But this was different. The past had a weight to it, an almost tangible density in the air. The fields whispered. The trees loomed like silent witnesses. They moved silently, boots muffled by moss and soft loam, each man acutely aware that one wrong sound could alter the outcome of a war 79 years in the past. Vasquez stopped suddenly and raised a fist. The squad froze. Ridley crept up beside her. "What do you see?" he whispered. She pointed. "Outpost, about 60 meters. Looks like a German MG nest. 2 men, sandbags, bicycle parked near a fence." Ridley peered through iron sights. Sure enough, 2 figures. One smoking, one manning the MG-34 lazily. They weren't expecting anything. "Tran, take the right. Vasquez left. Henderson, suppress if needed. No alarms." The shot was silent, surgical. Tran fired once. Vasquez followed. The Germans slumped. The machine gun didn't even twitch. They moved in and stripped the bodies quickly. Ridley inspected the papers. Wehrmacht infantry, likely stationed here to intercept paratroopers. Booker checked the map he'd torn from one of the German soldiers. "This matches the old 1944 layout I saw in the Smithsonian Archive project. They've got a command post in Sainte-Marie-du-Mont, couple clicks northwest. Which means we'll run into Pathfinders or 101 Saint on the way," Ridley said. "Let's make contact, carefully." The countryside grew louder with distant artillery. The low thud of naval bombardment rumbled like a sleeping giant. Flares streaked across the sky to the west. From a nearby hilltop, they saw the glow of fires far off, Carrington maybe. The war was erupting across the coast. They spotted movement ahead. American paratroopers, a small group of 4. They huddled near a ditch, confused. One man clutching a map and flashlight, trying to get bearings. Ridley signaled the squad to stay low. He crept forward alone, lowering his weapon, palms open. "Easy, fellas," Ridley said softly. "Friendly. I'm with the 82nd. We got separated." The nearest trooper swung his Thompson around. "What unit?" "You don't look like any 82nd I've seen." Ridley had anticipated this. He flashed a fabricated dog tag he'd taken from one of the German corpses and paired it with a throwaway line. "Got hit on the drop. Hooked up with a Brit recon group for a bit. Intel guy. Captain Ridley." A pause. Then the young trooper, barely 20, lowered his weapon slightly. "We're headed toward the rally point near La Barquette Lock. Lieutenant Green's leading." "Mind if we tag along?" Ridley asked. The trooper nodded slowly. "Yeah, sure, strength in numbers." By dawn, they'd integrated. Ridley's team kept their mouths shut and weapons slung low. Tran stuck near the rear. Booker offered to repair a jammed Thompson, which bought more goodwill than any rank insignia. Henderson sat beside one of the troopers, watching the sunrise edge over the fields. "You think we're ghosts?" the young soldier asked. "We die here? You think we haunt this place?" Henderson looked at him, then at the horizon. "Maybe. But I've been haunting places since Kandahar." The soldier didn't ask more. Ridley knelt beside Vasquez. "We'll stay long enough to make a difference. But we can't get trapped in the timeline. No names, no tech, no history lectures." She nodded. "Understood," Booker whispered from behind a hedgerow. "Radio intercept, German chatter. They spotted a group heading towards Sainte-Marie-du-Mont. Heavy resistance, tanks." "Perfect," Ridley muttered. "We walk into hell again." He looked up, gripping his rifle. "Move out. We're rewriting history, just not too much." Chapter 3. They crept through the hedgerow like ghosts, blending with the land itself. The air was thick with anticipation and smoke from the early fires of war. Through gaps in the brush, Ridley could see the faint outline of Sainte-Marie-du-Mont's rooftops ahead, dark silhouettes against a gradually brightening sky. Booker tapped his earpiece instinctively, forgetting it was just dead plastic now. "Still no signal," he muttered. Ridley crouched beside him. "We move on foot, eyes open. We do this clean." The village was defended, that much was clear. A pair of MG-42 nests had been dug into opposite ends of the main road, cleverly camouflaged with hay bales and hedgerow. They could hear commands shouted in German and the occasional clatter of boots. Tran pointed to the west flank. motioning 3 fingers. Patrol. 3 men. Wehrmacht. Routine path. Vasquez nodded. We flank left. Draw them in. Silent takedown. The plan went into motion. Henderson moved ahead and staged a subtle noise near a collapsed fence. The patrol took the bait, moving cautiously into the kill zone. 3 muffled shots, 3 bodies slumped. Ridley inspected one of the corpses and pulled an envelope from the breast pocket. Field orders, dated and sealed. He handed it to Booker. Decrypt this, fast. Booker unfolded the paper and scanned the German handwriting. Looks like a forward command detachment is holed up in the church rectory. 6 officers, 2 radios, 1 encrypted channel. Ridley's eyes narrowed. If we take that rectory, we own their comms. Which gives us control of enemy positioning in the whole zone, Vasquez added. They moved under cover of morning fog, approaching the village through a narrow farm path lined with ruined carts and low stone walls. Ridley signaled for the team to halt behind a cattle trough. Across the courtyard, the church rose in stoic silence. Its bell tower loomed above like a sentinel. A lone guard paced near the front door. Tran, Ridley whispered. Tower shot. You've got 1 chance. Tran exhaled. Range 170. Wind negligible. He squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked through the fog. The guard dropped like a puppet with cut strings. Move! Ridley barked. They stormed the courtyard, boots slapping on flagstones. Henderson breached the door with a shoulder charge that sent splinters flying. Inside, the rectory erupted with shouts. Gunfire! Close! Brutal! Vasquez took the first 2 officers down with controlled bursts. Booker lobbed a stun grenade into the radio room. It popped, followed by screams. Ridley cleared the hallway and charged into the command room. He tackled the officer, reaching for the field radio, slamming him to the floor with the butt of his XM7. The man went limp. They swept the building in 30 seconds flat. Clear! Ridley stood in the middle of the room, panting. Maps and coded message slips littered the long wooden table. A steaming pot of coffee still sat on a hot plate. Booker was already dismantling the field radio. Crude but functional. I can spoof a retreat signal, delay their reinforcements by at least 2 hours. Ridley turned to Vasquez. How long until this place is crawling with German reinforcements? 40 minutes, maybe less. We hold for 30, extract all intel, then torch the place. They worked in silence. Booker downloaded everything he could onto a stolen pad. Tran stood sentry at the bell tower. Henderson scavenged explosives. Outside, more gunfire rang out. Not from them. From the fields west of town. The real 101st was making its push. Ridley peered through a slit window. He could see the flash of American tracer fire and the silhouettes of advancing troops. Time to link up, he muttered. They set charges on the command room and exited through a cellar tunnel. As they emerged into a garden of tangled vines, the rectory exploded behind them. Glass, stone, and splinters erupting into the morning sky. The past was at war, and Bravo was right in the middle of Chapter 4. The road was little more than a dirt track, pitted and torn by the weight of German armor and days of wet spring storms. It wound between hedgerows like a serpent, each bend hiding the threat of a machine gun nest or mortar team. Bravo moved fast and low, interspersed with a battered squad from the 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne. The integration was uneasy, but effective. The paratroopers were wary of Ridley's squad. Too precise, too well-equipped, too strange. But after seeing them in action at Sainte-Marie-du-Mont, doubt turned into quiet admiration. Ridley jogged beside Lieutenant Green, a wiry man with soot on his face and a revolver in one hand. We've been pushing toward Carentan since 0300, Green said between breaths. Bridge up ahead is the next obstacle. Germans blew one to the south. This one's still intact, far as we know. Ridley nodded. We'll scout ahead. If it's trapped, we'll clear it. Green gave a grim smile. Appreciate that. You Rangers move like damn shadows. Ridley didn't correct him. Ahead, Tran knelt near a slope leading to the bridge. He held up 2 fingers, 2 sentries, low activity. Vasquez joined him. Thermals would have made this easy. Now, we do it the old way. Like the rest of them, Henderson muttered. No toys, no backup, just good old-fashioned sneak and peek. They split into teams. Vasquez and Tran moved wide left through the brush. Ridley and Henderson took the right. As Ridley crept closer, he caught sight of the bridge, an old stone arch flanked by sandbags and a disabled Kubelwagen. A machine gunner sat lazily, half asleep, the second soldier smoking and watching the mist drift across the water. 2 suppressed shots, the bodies crumpled quietly. "Clear," Vasquez whispered over. Booker jogged up and examined the bridge supports. "No charges I can see, but it's got signs of wiring. Could be rigged remotely from the village." "Then we cut the signal," Ridley replied. "Let's pull the wiring, reroute the charge back to a deadman trigger, just in case." They got to work. It was delicate, tense work in silence. The sun had begun to rise behind them, streaking the sky with gold and pale orange. "Sir," Tran said suddenly, "truck, approaching, fast!" Everyone scrambled into cover. The growl of an engine grew louder. A gray Opel Blitz truck tore down the road, overloaded with Wehrmacht troops, at least 10, maybe more. Ridley waited. They needed to get close. Now, the ambush was sudden and violent. A well-placed explosive from Henderson flipped the truck onto its side. Flames burst from the hood. Gunfire erupted from the ditch as Ridley's team cut the soldiers down. Booker flanked right, putting 2 rounds into a fleeing officer. The shooting died quickly, replaced by groans and the hiss of burning rubber. They searched the truck. Maps, munitions, rations. Vasquez lifted a crate. German Panzerfausts. They were bringing these to Carentan. Ridley opened a pouch and found orders marked urgent to Kommandantur Carentan. He handed it to Booker. Booker skimmed it. "It's bad. There's an SS detachment digging in. Armor support arriving by midday." "We need to move," Ridley said. "We link with the main 101st column and warn them, and then—" "We take Carentan," Vasquez finished. They crossed the bridge. Behind them, the rising sun cast long shadows over the truck wreckage and the blood-soaked road. History waited just ahead. Chapter 5. Carentan sat low and gray on the horizon, its rooftops poking through early morning haze. The fields leading to it were deceptively serene, long stretches of open land broken by shallow ditches and thick hedgerows. But Ridley knew better. Every step forward brought them closer to a hornet's nest. They linked up with another battered squad from the 101st, 10 men led by Staff Sergeant McClure, a gravel-voiced veteran with a crooked nose and a 1,000-yard stare. His men were worn, low on ammo, and hungry, but still moving. "SS patrols have been probing the outskirts," McClure reported. "Snipers in the belfry near the eastern quarter. No way we get armor through without clearing them out first." Ridley looked to Vasquez. "Sniper op?" She nodded. "Tran and I can set up from the grain silo." The team fanned out along the tree line. Booker hacked a crude directional antenna from the salvaged German comm gear and set it on a tripod. "Intercepting local radio. Might give us heads up on reinforcements." From their position atop the silo, Tran and Vasquez had a clean line of sight. "Target acquired," Tran whispered. "SS sharpshooter, scoped car 98. He's good." "Not good enough," Vasquez replied. Her shot rang out a second later. The figure in the tower fell backward, rifle clattering against stone. McClure gave a low whistle. "Clean work." With the Overwatch threat removed, the squads moved to the edge of the village, sticking close to cover. Ridley noticed the eerie stillness. No distant artillery, no birds, just silence. "Feels wrong," Henderson muttered. "Too quiet." They advanced street by street, clearing houses and alleyways. Each building was a gamble. Some were empty. Some held terrified civilians. Others held soldiers who didn't get the memo. In one stone farmhouse, they found a wounded American paratrooper, curled behind a stove, leg shattered. "Name's Dawson," he rasped. "3rd Battalion. Got clipped on the drop." Ridley knelt beside him. "We've got you! Sit tight!" Henderson slung him over his shoulder without a word. Near the village center, resistance stiffened. German voices barked orders, and machine guns opened up from a fortified post office. "Booker, smoke!" Ridley ordered. Thick white clouds poured across the plaza as the team flanked right. Henderson laid down suppressing fire with the captured MG-42, while Vasquez moved to breach the side door. "Stack!" The team entered low and fast. Vasquez kicked the door in. Booker fired 2 rounds into the chest of the nearest soldier. Ridley tossed a frag into the stairwell. The explosion rocked the building. They cleared the structure floor by floor. By the time it was over, the garrison lay scattered among broken tiles and blood-stained ledgers. Booker collapsed in a chair, panting. They were prepping for something big. Mortars, flare stacks, medkits. They were digging in for the long haul. Ridley paced the room. We need to push now before armor arrives. Tell McClure, full assault. Hit them before the SS locks the gates. As morning light crept across the cobblestones, Bravo prepared to punch through the last German lines and take the town. The battle for Carentan had begun. Chapter 6. Gunfire erupted as Bravo's squad breached the perimeter of Carentan's central quarter. Muzzle flashes lit up window frames and doorways. The Germans had fortified the narrow alleyways with sandbags and barbed wire, transforming the cobbled streets into kill zones. Ridley moved fast, rifle up, issuing short commands. Cover left, push on the right. Booker was crouched behind a collapsed wagon, typing furiously on a salvaged German cipher device. I'm trying to jam their field orders. Give me 60 seconds. Henderson roared as he kicked open a cellar door and hurled a frag grenade inside. It detonated with a thunderous roar, sending dirt and bodies flying up through the street-level grate. Vasquez ducked behind a ruined wall, reloading. Sniper! Third floor! Yellow shutter! Tran didn't hesitate. He sighted in and fired one shot through the narrow window slit. The shadow in the window crumpled backward. Clear, Tran called, but they weren't. Not yet. The sound of tank treads reached their ears next, deep, metallic clanking echoing down the road. Panzer! McClure's voice boomed from down the block. They brought in armor. Ridley sprinted across the street under fire. Vasquez, Booker, Panzerfausts, you've got one shot each. Booker dropped the cipher unit and pulled a launcher from his back. Line it up! I need a spot! The Panzer IV came into view, turret swiveling toward their position. Ridley fired a burst at the commander's hatch to make him duck. It worked. Now! Vasquez and Booker fired simultaneously. The twin streaks of smoke lit the air as the Panzerfausts screamed toward their target. One hit the tread. The second struck the fuel cell. The tank erupted in a ball of orange flame, pieces of track flying across the street. The blast rocked nearby buildings, windows shattered. A German machine gunner fled the wreckage only to be cut down by Henderson. Ridley barked, "Push up! Clear the block!" They stormed, building after building, moving like a coordinated wave of steel and fire. Civilians hid in basements. Dogs barked in the distance. Blood streaked the doorframes. By 8:03, the last holdout near the schoolhouse surrendered. Ridley kicked open the door and found 3 German officers with hands raised. "We are done," one said in broken English. "This sector is yours." Ridley kept his rifle up. Damn right it is. Booker secured the radio room while Vasquez tied the prisoners. Outside, American reinforcements streamed into town. Jeeps, medics, radio men. McClure approached Ridley, helmet tucked under one arm. "You boys just pulled off the impossible." Ridley shook his head. "We bought time, that's all. The real war is still ahead." McClure clapped him on the shoulder. "Well, you've got a hell of a head start." As the sun rose higher over liberated Carentan, Bravo stood on the steps of the schoolhouse, battered, bloodied, but undefeated. Whatever storm had brought them here, they were making it count. Chapter 7. The schoolhouse had become a makeshift HQ. Maps were spread across desks once used for Latin conjugations. The smell of gunpowder mixed with old chalk dust. Radios crackled with frantic chatter, Allied officers barking updates as columns advanced across the region. Ridley stood near the blackboard, eyes scanning a scouted terrain map. If we hold Carentan, we control the causeways. It's the hinge point between Utah and Omaha sectors. Booker tapped his pencil on the table. The Krauts are reorganizing. These lines show fallback positions near Saint-Côme-du-Mont. We'll see counteroffensives by dusk if they get armor over the Douve. "Then we hold the river," Ridley said, "and we make sure their armor never arrives." McClure entered with a battered radio operator trailing behind. "London just checked in. High Command's listening. They want confirmation on the town's status." Ridley raised an eyebrow. "They doubt we took it?" "They're surprised you're still alive." Ridley walked over and keyed the mic. "This is Bravo Actual. Carentan secured. Resistance neutralized. Preparing for expected counterattack." The voice that came back was smooth, British, and cool. "Copy. Bravo Actual. Be advised, reconnaissance reports German armor movement from south and southeast. Estimated 2 hours until contact." "Understood. Bravo out. He turned to Vasquez. Get eyes on the southern road. Set traps, mines, fallback points. Tooth and nail? She asked. To the bone. Outside, Tran and Henderson had set up a series of overlapping fields of fire. They dragged sandbags and overturned desks into barricades. French locals came out of hiding with cautious curiosity. A young boy offered Henderson a rusted tin of sardines. He took it, nodded once, and tucked it in his vest. Booker was in the radio room rerouting frequencies, trying to decode intercepted transmissions. They're broadcasting encrypted positions. SS units are prepping a push. They're calling it Operation Donnerkiel. Ridley cursed. Thunderbolt. They're making this a statement. McClure passed Ridley a cigarette and lit it with a trembling match. What's the play? We hold long enough for the second armored to reach us, then we smash them between hammer and anvil. The ground began to tremble. Contact south, Tran called from the bell tower. Ridley stepped into the street and saw it. Dark silhouettes of tanks cresting the far hill, infantry fanned out behind them. The SS had arrived. The next chapter of their impossible war was about to begin. Chapter 8. The first German shells struck the outer perimeter with a teeth-rattling concussive blast. Dirt and debris sprayed the air as Bravo squads scrambled into their positions. The counterattack had begun. Ridley crouched behind a makeshift barricade of desks and sandbags near the schoolhouse gate, scanning the tree line with binoculars. Columns of infantry advanced behind the smoking husk of a downed tree, the SS units moving in textbook formation. Contact! Southwest hedgerow! Henderson shouted. Vasquez unleashed a burst from her rifle, dropping 2 soldiers as Booker radioed for supporting fire. No Allied artillery yet, either out of range or busy elsewhere. Ridley clicked his mic. Tran, give me a mark on the lead tank. Tran, positioned high in the bell tower, responded instantly. Panzer IV, 300 meters, adjusting windage, firing. His shot screamed through the air and struck the tank's side turret. It rocked slightly, the hatch flinging open as the crew attempted to bail. Vasquez finished them off. Bastards are pushing right, McClure called. They're trying to flank the orchard. Booker, bring down the fallback mines, Ridley barked. Booker hit the detonator. A section of the orchard erupted, flinging bodies and soil into the air. Screams followed, then silence. Still, the SS pressed forward. Machine guns rattled from the rooftops. Civilians screamed as stray rounds peppered stone walls and shattered windows. A young corporal from the 101st staggered past Ridley, blood pouring from his shoulder. "We need medics!" he cried. Ridley grabbed his arm, stabilized him behind a wagon, and shoved a field dressing into his hand. "Press and hold. You live, soldier." Tran radioed down again. Armor regrouping. Another tank coming up the road. Panther class. Ridley swore. Vasquez, get the last Panzerfaust ready. I only have 1 shot. Make it count. She crouched low, heart pounding, tracking the massive tank as it cleared the rise. It turned its turret toward the bell tower. Tran called, "I've been spotted." "Take the shot," Ridley ordered. Vasquez squeezed the trigger. The rocket screamed through the morning air and slammed into the Panther's frontal plate just as it prepared to fire. The explosion rocked the tank, flipping the turret off like a bottle cap. The bell tower shook but remained intact. Tran radioed, "Still alive? Barely." Booker finally got through to Allied command. "We've got them bottlenecked. If we hold 5 more minutes, 2nd Armored's forward column can clean up the rest." McClure reloaded and fired over a shattered windowsill. "You heard him! Hold this damn town!" And hold it they did. Through grit, precision, and sheer defiance, Bravo and the 101st kept the SS at bay until the rumble of Sherman tanks signaled their salvation. The remaining Germans scattered. Some surrendered. Some didn't get the chance. As silence fell over the battlefield, Ridley sat against the wall of the schoolhouse, breath coming in ragged bursts. "Hell of a morning," he muttered. Vasquez handed him a battered canteen. And it's not over yet. Chapter 9. Smoke hung in the air like a curtain, muting the morning sun and casting Carentan in a gauzy haze. The crackle of dying fires mingled with the clink of spent casings and the low murmur of soldiers speaking in hushed tones. Carentan was theirs, but the price had been high. Ridley stood over a crude field hospital in what had once been a butcher's shop. Cots lined the walls, stained with blood and sweat. Medics worked in silence, sleeves soaked crimson, hands steady but eyes hollow. The wounded moaned softly or stared vacantly at the ceiling. A young private, no older than 19, lay clutching a bloodied photograph of a girl back home, his lips moving in a silent prayer, or perhaps a name. A chaplain moved between cots, whispering last rites to the dying and murmured comfort to the living. The butcher's hooks still hung from the rafters, a cruel reminder of what this place once was and what it had become. Ridley stepped outside, past Henderson and Tran, who were dragging sandbags into a more permanent barricade. Henderson was limping slightly, a jagged scrape running down the side of his face, but he worked in silence. "We won," Tran said, voice flat. Ridley nodded. "This round." Across the square, the shattered remnants of a Panzer smoldered, its twisted turret still oozing smoke. Civilians crept out from cellars and shattered homes, blinking in the morning light, their faces a mixture of awe, fear, and suspicion. Some wept openly. Others swept debris from their thresholds with mechanical determination, trying to reclaim normalcy. At the schoolhouse, Vasquez sat on the steps, reassembling her rifle. Her hands moved automatically. The ritual, a comfort. Booker was inside, still monitoring radio chatter. He looked up as Ridley entered. "We're in the reports now," he said. "Command is calling it a critical victory. They're sending in a photography unit to capture the story." Ridley raised an eyebrow. "A story, huh?" Booker smirked. "A convenient one. We held the town. We're the good guys. Nice and clean." Ridley poured himself a coffee from a dented thermos. It was bitter, metallic, and cold, but he drank it anyway. "Nothing about where we came from?" "Not a whisper." Outside, the squad gathered later in the square. McClure was there too, now on a makeshift crutch, leg bandaged and bloodied. He handed Ridley a sealed envelope. "Orders from HQ. They're redeploying us north. Something about intercepting German communications near Isigny." Ridley took it and nodded. "We're not staying long." Vasquez glanced toward the edge of town, where plumes of smoke still rose from earlier shell impacts. "Feels wrong, like we didn't finish something." "We didn't," Ridley said, "but war doesn't wait for closure." They loaded what gear they had left. Rations were light. Ammunition was low. Tran gathered the last of the morphine from the aid station and distributed it evenly. Henderson checked each rifle, each magazine, with an almost religious reverence. As they packed, a French woman approached, holding a bundle of cloth. A child peeked out from behind her skirt. "Merci," she whispered, offering the cloth. Inside, a loaf of hard bread, a wedge of cheese, and a jar of preserves. Ridley nodded, taking it gently. "Pour vos enfants," she said softly. "Pour tous les nôtres," Ridley replied. The squad moved out on foot, passing burned-out vehicles, shattered homes, and graves hastily dug with helmets and bayonets. Booker trailed behind, adjusting a salvaged field radio strapped to his back. Along the way, they paused near a barn where Vasquez discovered a wounded German soldier, barely a teenager, clutching his abdomen. He looked up at her with wild eyes. "Nicht schießen," he pleaded. She hesitated. Ridley stepped beside her. "Booker, call it in. Let the medics know he's here." The boy's eyes widened in confusion. "Warum?" "Because you're human," Ridley muttered, "and maybe that still matters." They left him there, watched over by two locals with a Red Cross flag. By the time they reached the edge of town, Allied engineers had arrived, setting up radio masts, replacing sandbags, and cataloging weapons. Trucks trundled in with supplies. A photographer snapped a picture of Bravo Squad as they passed, catching them in mid-stride, silhouetted by smoke. Later, that photo would end up on the front page of an American newspaper. The headline would read, "Heroes of Carentan." No mention of who they were, no mention of how they got there. They walked on. Toward Isigny, toward more war, toward whatever came next. And all the while, the past clung to them like smoke, heavy and unforgettable. Chapter 10. The sun beat down on the narrow dirt road, rays slicing through broken clouds and glinting off the helmets of Bravo Squad as they advanced northward. The sounds of Carentan faded behind them. Distant artillery, the mutter of medics, the sharp bark of Allied orders. Ahead lay uncertainty. They walked in staggered formation, flanking a cart borrowed from local farmers. The mule pulling it trotted dutifully, indifferent to the rifles slung across its cargo. Booker rode on the cart's edge, fiddling with the field radio, one antenna jutting skyward like a flag of intent. Ridley marched at the front, scanning the map in his hand. The route to Isigny was farmland stitched with orchards, hedgerows tall enough to hide entire battalions. Danger could be lurking behind any wall of green. Henderson broke the silence. "We've got 2 mags each. Tran's low on frags. Booker's radio battery is at half, and the nearest Allied armor's still 20 clicks south." Ridley folded the map and tucked it into his vest. "So we stay smart. And invisible." The squad moved in silence for a while. A flock of crows rose in alarm from a nearby copse of trees. Henderson tensed. Vasquez raised her rifle. "False alarm," Tran muttered. "Birds don't shoot back." They crossed a wooden bridge over a sluggish creek, the boards creaking beneath their weight. On the far bank, a rusted bicycle leaned against a stone wall, its wheels buckled and caked in dried blood. Booker dismounted. "Give me a minute, picking up something." He knelt beside the road, turning the dial on his battered receiver. Static, then faint Morse code. Ridley crouched beside him. "German?" Booker nodded. "Encrypted traffic. Strong signal. North-northwest. About 6 clicks." Ridley turned to the rest. "Change of plan. We're diverting west into the Orchard Valley. That's our intercept point." The detour took them into dense rows of apple trees, the sweet scent of ripening fruit at odds with the grime on their uniforms. Shadows flitted across the ground like ghosts. Vasquez whispered, "You notice how quiet it is?" Too quiet. They moved through the orchard like phantoms. Tran took point, eyes scanning tree lines, finger resting lightly on his trigger. Suddenly, a glint. "Down!" Ridley shouted. A sniper's shot cracked from the hillside. The bullet tore through Booker's sleeve, missing flesh by inches. He rolled into a ditch. "Contact! Ridgeline!" Tran barked. Henderson dropped to one knee, sighted in, and returned fire. The shot echoed. A scream followed. More German voices barked from above. "Squad, suppressive fire!" Ridley ordered. Rounds poured into the hillside. Vasquez flanked right, moving with swift, deadly grace. She found a rocky outcrop and picked off a German rifleman reloading behind a tree. Booker crawled up beside Ridley, clutching his radio. "Signal's stronger. They're transmitting from that hilltop farmhouse." Ridley nodded. "That's our objective. Let's take it." They advanced uphill under fire, ducking behind low stone walls and fallen logs. Henderson lobbed a smoke grenade. The hill bloomed with gray mist. Under cover, Bravo pressed the assault. Tran breached the farmhouse door with a kick. Inside, 2 Germans turned too slowly. Both dropped before they could raise their weapons. The radio was there, humming, plugged into an array of cables and field batteries. Booker moved fast, disconnecting wires, inserting a tap device. "Give me 3 minutes." Vasquez covered the window. "We don't have 3 minutes." German boots thundered on the floorboards. Ridley laid down suppressive fire at the stairwell. Booker worked with shaking fingers. "Just another second. Done." He yanked a notebook from the shelf, filled with encrypted frequencies. Tran shouted from outside, "We've got more movement! Trucks, 2 clicks out!" Ridley grabbed the intel and stuffed it into his pack. "Fall back! Melt into the hedgerows!" They ran, ducking low, the orchard swallowing them. Behind them, the farmhouse erupted as Henderson set charges and lit the fuse. The blast rocked the hilltop. They regrouped near a dry well at the edge of the orchard. Booker handed Ridley the notebook. "Encrypted, SS cipher format, but I'll break it." Ridley nodded. "You've got until we reach Isigny." The road stretched ahead, silent, tense, and filled with more ghosts yet to. Chapter 11. The squad moved quickly but cautiously, following a narrow trail between thick hedgerows that rose like walls on either side. Sunlight streamed through in splintered beams, casting long shadows that flickered with every gust of wind. The Orchard Valley lay behind them, smoldering with the remnants of the farmhouse explosion. Ahead, the road to Isigny stretched across low hills and farmland crisscrossed by irrigation ditches, dirt tracks, and broken fences. Ridley led the way, map folded under one arm, rifle slung over the other. Booker walked beside him, flipping through the torn cipher notebook with his thumb while balancing the receiver strapped across his back. The symbols were tight, clustered like a language in code. Booker muttered as he read, translating snippets. "Most of this is location coordinates. Here, Look, scheduled movement of the 17th SS Panzergrenadier Division. Reinforcements are headed for the Isigny rail junction. Looks like they're repositioning to hold the Cottenton flank. Ridley took the book and scanned the German notes. If they regroup there, it'll choke the entire Allied Western advance. Exactly, Booker said. Isigny is the hinge point. Hold it. We control the northern push towards Cherbourg. They heard distant rumbling. Not artillery, not tanks. Trucks. A column. Maybe a resupply convoy. German. Ridley signaled the squad to cover. Vasquez and Henderson peeled left. Tran melted into the undergrowth on the right. They lay low, ears trained. The vehicles came into view, a pair of Opel Blitz trucks followed by a Kubelwagen. Soldiers rode in the back, rifles slung lazily across their laps. The enemy wasn't expecting contact here. Ridley whispered, "Ambush." The plan formed in seconds. Vasquez would disable the lead vehicle. Henderson would cover the rear. Tran would pick off officers. The rest would sweep and secure. On Ridley's mark, the trap snapped shut. Vasquez fired an anti-vehicle round straight into the front tire of the lead truck. It skidded sideways, crashing into a ditch. The Kubelwagen driver swerved and slammed into a stone post. The rear truck tried to reverse. Too late. Gunfire erupted from the hedgerows. German soldiers scrambled for cover, but Bravo's fire was precise. Tran dropped 2 men who tried to flee into the trees. Henderson picked off a machine gunner. Ridley led the assault, storming the side of the disabled truck with Vasquez. Inside the lead vehicle, they found crates of ammunition, fuel, rations, and radio equipment. Booker grinned as he inspected it. Now this is a jackpot. One German officer, dazed but alive, raised his hands. "Ich ergebe mich, bitte." Ridley dragged him out. "Get his map pouch." Inside were coordinates, scribbled in pencil, matching Booker's decrypted notes. Confirmations of the 17th's approach to Isigny. More than that, details on bridge demolitions, fallback artillery, and supply routes. "We've got their entire playbook," Ridley said. They set charges on the trucks and withdrew. Booker transmitted a coded summary to Allied command using their tapped German frequency. They moved on. Later that afternoon, the countryside turned to marsh. Fields sank into boggy earth. Boots squelched. The smell of stagnant water filled their noses. They passed through an abandoned hamlet. Only chickens remained, clucking nervously between ruined houses. A half-burned signpost read, La Rivière. Tran stepped into a barn to scout. "Clear," he called. The squad entered, collapsing for a brief rest. Vasquez wrapped a bandage around a cut on her forearm. Booker sat with the cipher book, cross-checking coordinates. Ridley approached McClure, who stood watch near the barn door. "How's the leg?" "Hurts like hell," McClure said, "but I can shoot." "We may need that soon." Ridley took out a ration bar and broke it in half. He handed a piece to McClure, chewing the other. "We're still ahead of them. If we can hit Isigny before they get organized." "We'll tip the war's whole damn seesaw," McClure finished. That night, they set camp near a grove of willows. Booker decoded more transmissions under a poncho tent. Rain pattered softly on the canvas. Vasquez cleaned her rifle by moonlight. Henderson cooked a thin stew from Allied rations and wild onions. Ridley sat quietly, writing in a pocket notebook. He was trying to log everything. Names, places, actions. Not for orders, for memory, for the record. He looked up at Booker. "Any news from command?" "Only static now. The channel's cold. Either jamming or we're too deep." "Then we keep moving." By morning, the skies had cleared. They pushed north. At noon, the outskirts of Isigny came into view. A town of cobbled streets, squat stone houses, and a central bridge over the Veer River. Smoke drifted from chimneys, but the flags were German. They took position on a ridge overlooking the town. Ridley raised his binoculars. Trucks, troops, mortar teams, anti-air guns. The Germans had fortified the bridge. Tran exhaled slowly. "That's a hornet's nest." Booker joined him. "They're preparing demolitions. If we wait, they'll blow the bridge the moment we approach." Ridley stood. "Then, we don't wait." He pointed down the slope. "Tonight, we go in. Quiet, fast. We hold the bridge. And we let nothing through." Below, the town braced for war. Above, Bravo Squad prepared to become its Chapter 12. Twilight fell over Isigny as Bravo Squad crept into the town's southern edge. Darkness cloaked the cobblestones, flickering shadows cast by the occasional gas lamp or the red glow of a cigarette from a German sentry. Their objective loomed ahead. The Weir River Bridge, a narrow but critical crossing fortified with sandbags, machine gun nests, and demolitions. The attack came in silence, then in fire. Tran slit a sentry's throat behind a tool shed. Vasquez sniped the machine gunner from a second-story window. Booker jammed the German radio frequency with bursts of static and coded feedback. Henderson lobbed a flashbang into the central bunker. Ridley led the final push. It was over in minutes. Quick, surgical, devastating. Bravo Squad secured the bridge, cut the demolition wires, and raised an Allied flare into the sky. Green, the signal for friendly forces. Within the hour, elements of the U.S. 29th Infantry Division approached from the west, cautious, confused, and armed. "Hold fire," Ridley barked. "U.S. Special Operations!" The infantry patrol leader, a young lieutenant with dirt-smeared glasses and a Springfield M1903, approached hesitantly. "What unit? Where's your CO?" Ridley stepped forward slowly. "Captain Jack Ridley, Bravo Squad, attached to..." He paused, then simply added, "Allied Intelligence." The lieutenant stared at them, at their body armor, their compact M4 carbines, night vision scopes, Kevlar helmets, radios with digital readouts. None of it made sense. "Jesus Christ," one of the infantrymen whispered. "You look like something out of Buck Rogers." Another said, "Those rifles, they ain't Garands." The tension crackled. One soldier raised his weapon. "I think they're Krauts. Germans in disguise." Vasquez stepped forward, her voice firm. "You really think the Germans got Puerto Rican women in their ranks?" The patrol hesitated. Then the lieutenant raised a hand. "Stand down." Still wary, the patrol followed them across the bridge. In the town square, under moonlight and smoke, Bravo Squad debriefed. More infantrymen gathered, medics tended to the wounded, radios buzzed. The company's CO, a hard-eyed major named Dalton, finally arrived. He had a cavalry mustache and a pistol worn smooth by use. He examined Ridley closely. "You boys some kind of OSS, MacArthur's spooks?" "We're here to win," Ridley said, avoiding the question. Dalton squinted. "You sure as hell ain't standard issue." The major's aide said, "Sir, they've got weapons we've never seen. Their scopes glow, their uniforms repel water, and the one called Booker just decrypted an SS signal in 5 seconds." Booker added, "I also intercepted enemy reinforcements en route from Comont. Suggest you reposition your reserves accordingly." Dalton stared. "You're serious?" Ridley nodded. "You want Isigny to hold? Then you follow our lead." Dalton nodded once. "All right, show me what the hell war looks like where you're from." Over the next 2 hours, Bravo Squad worked with the 29th. Vasquez trained the mortar crews how to reposition for indirect fire using laser aiming techniques. Henderson reinforced the roadblocks with IED principles. Booker relayed encrypted signals using 21st century protocols to Allied command stations in the rear. Tran helped field medics use their combat gauze and hemostatic agents, saving lives on the spot. At first, the infantrymen stared in silence. Then, they asked questions. "What kind of battery is that? How do you fire that rifle so fast? Can I try those binoculars? You've got radios you can wear?" Bravo taught. The infantry learned. By dawn, Isigny was a fortress, reinforced with old resolve and new technology. Dalton pulled Ridley aside. "I don't know who you really are, but whatever you are, you're damn good." Ridley clapped him on the shoulder. "We're soldiers. Same as you." In the distance, trucks approached. British units from the east, American engineers from the south. The bridge was now the artery of a new push northward, and at its center stood Bravo Squad, strangers in time, brothers in arms, unlikely heroes of a war they were never meant to fight. Chapter 13. The streets of Isigny glowed with the dim orange of early dawn. Smoke from the night's fires still drifted lazily between buildings, and the distant growl of approaching engines stirred the men from their makeshift beds. The bridge held firm beneath Bravo Squad's feet, but the war had not paused, not even for breath. Ridley stood at the center of the bridge, staring east where the morning light kissed the horizon. The faint smell of cordite lingered in the air. Booker approached, holding a freshly cracked field ration and a sheaf of notes. "Intel from the 29th, Booker said. "Major Dalton's men intercepted fragments of intercepted German chatter. There's movement northeast. Looks like the 12th SS is regrouping after being routed at Caen. They're heading toward our flank." Ridley nodded. "They'll try to retake the bridge, cut us off from reinforcements." "They might try more than that," Booker said grimly. "We've got reports of Wehrmacht elements integrating with Waffen-SS for the first time in this region. Desperation makes strange bedfellows." Behind them, Vasquez tightened the straps on her gear. Sounds like they're about to find out what a bad idea that is. She and Tran had spent most of the night coordinating defensive emplacements with engineers from the 112th Combat Engineers. Bravo's gear had revolutionized the way the bridge was now fortified. Claymores from the future were buried behind hedgerows. Sensors rigged from their own salvaged drones watched the skies. "Movement," Henderson barked, pointing across the river. A column of British troops approached, green berets and khaki fatigues, Lee Enfields cradled professionally. At their head, a stern-eyed major with a polished Webley revolver and a clipboard. "Major Spencer Caldwell, Royal Marines Commando," he announced crisply. "You're the Americans who stormed this bridge last night?" Ridley stepped forward. "Bravo Squad, Captain Ridley." Spencer gave them a once-over, pausing at the helmets, the goggles, the unfamiliar rifles. "Your equipment, it's advanced." "It gets the job done," Ridley said. Caldwell nodded slowly, as if filing away questions for later. "We've got orders to sweep east to link with elements of the 3rd Canadian Infantry. I'd appreciate support from your team." "You'll have it," Ridley replied. Their first engagement came near a hedgerow beyond the outskirts. A German machine gun nest had pinned down the British vanguard. Caldwell's men, trained and disciplined, were trapped. Ridley signaled Vasquez, who scaled a crumbled wall with a thermal scope. 2 MG-42s, interlocking fields, infantry support dug in under camouflage netting. Booker patched their drone eye feed into Caldwell's radio. The British major stared, amazed, as real-time footage of German placements flickered to life on a device smaller than a book. "What sorcery is this?" "Just better situational awareness," Booker replied. Tran and Henderson moved like wraiths through the hedgerows. One by one, they silenced the nests. Then Bravo's squad led the charge, their weapons barking short bursts of precise fire. Caldwell's commandos followed, bayonets glinting in the sun. When it was done, the enemy lay routed. One of Caldwell's corporals leaned against a tree, panting. "They don't fight like we do. They fight like ghosts." Back at the bridge, reinforcements arrived. Elements of the 4th Armored Division rumbled into Isigny. Sherman tanks trailing black smoke, crews wide-eyed at the sight of Bravo Squad. One tank commander, a sergeant from New Jersey, couldn't help but ask, "You guys from Roswell or something?" Ridley didn't answer. He didn't need to. As the day wore on, Bravo split their time between helping Dalton's staff coordinate the defense of Isigny and prepping for the push towards Saint-Lô. Casualties were light, thanks to the preemptive strikes, but everyone knew the worst was yet to come. Late in the day, Ridley met with Caldwell and Dalton inside the old mayor's office. Maps were spread across the desk. Booker stood nearby, marking out expected SS movements with chalk. Caldwell lit a cigarette. "You boys are some kind of miracle, but I'd like to know. What happens when your war is over?" Ridley didn't blink. "We go home, same as you." Caldwell raised an eyebrow. "Do you?" Silence. Outside, kids from the village brought wildflowers to the soldiers. One placed a bouquet on the hood of a Bravo Squad Humvee. The paint was chipped and bloodied, but to them it gleamed like a chariot. Strangers in time, but symbols of something larger. A different kind of dawn was breaking. Chapter 14. The night over, Isigny was heavy and wet. Fog rolled in from the Vire River like a silent tide, cloaking the bridge, the fields, and the hills beyond in a pale, ghostly sheet. It softened the world, dulled the sounds of boots on gravel, and smothered the dying embers of the day's firestorms. Ridley stood by the water's edge, peering into the gray curtain. He could feel the silence, the pause, before the next act of violence. He knew this kind of quiet. It was never peace. It was anticipation. Behind him, the squad was making preparations. Booker was hunched over his gear beneath a makeshift canopy, working by red-lensed flashlight as he tried to fine-tune the satellite receiver. Despite being hopelessly out of time, he still held on to the hope that he might reach someone back home, if only to send a log, a report, a message. "Anything?" Ridley asked. Booker shook his head, not looking up. "Static. It's like the signal is ricocheting off time itself. We're isolated?" Ridley nodded slowly. "Maybe that's not such a bad thing." From inside the town hall, the crackle of a field radio burst through. Henderson's voice followed, rough and tired. "We've got something. Allied scouts on the Eastern Front report a large Wehrmacht formation moving toward Saint-Clément. Could be a flanking attempt." Ridley entered the building. The mayor's office had become a forward operations center. Maps now covered nearly every surface. Strings and pins plotted troop movement. Dalton leaned over one such map, while Major Caldwell stood near the window, coffee in hand. "We're expecting an offensive at dawn," Caldwell said without turning. "Every report suggests they're mustering what's left of their armor for one last push. If they take back this bridge, they stall our entire right flank." Ridley nodded. "And they know we've disrupted their comms. They'll act fast and without finesse." Dalton looked up. "We're stretched thin. We've got tanks, sure, but not enough infantry to hold this place without being bled dry. You and your team, you've already shifted the tide once. Can you do it again?" "We'll need full operational control on the bridge," Ridley said. "Our own timing, our own weapons." Caldwell stepped forward. "You'll have it. I'll reposition the commandos to your flanks." Ridley nodded. "Then we've got a chance." Outside, Bravo Squad prepared. Vasquez checked and rechecked the laser tripwires laid across the main approach. Tran supervised the deployment of anti-armor drones, recharged manually from salvaged generator packs. Henderson calibrated an infrared perimeter system, relaying triggers back to their tablets. Booker uploaded last-minute encrypted scripts to the modified German radio array, their version of a minefield. At 2:14, the fog shifted, not natural. Booker's sensor rig lit up with movement, slow, deliberate, coordinated. "They're here," he muttered. The first contact came at the northeast edge of town, a probing force. German boots in the mist, silent until a tripwire triggered a blue arc of light and a concussive blast tossed two bodies skyward. Then came the flares, red arcs cut through the fog. Then machine gun fire, then screams. The assault began in earnest. 3 Wehrmacht squads charged from the southeast, supported by a light Panzer IV. Its turret swung side to side, looking for a target. Tran dropped to prone position. "Armor active!" Vasquez radioed back. "Visual confirmed. I'm on it." She moved through shadows, sliding beneath a collapsed storefront and emerging near the fountain. From her position, she fired a javelin missile. The Panzer exploded in a roar of fire and splintered steel. Cheers erupted from the 112th engineers holding the line, but it wasn't over. Booker's voice cut through the chaos. "Second wave, heavier, SS elements, and Ridley, we've got radio chatter in German and Russian." Ridley froze. "Russian?" Booker nodded. "Volunteers. From the Ostlegionen. They've merged Soviet defectors into their push." Ridley cursed. "Caldwell! Dalton! Prepare your reserves! They're throwing everything at us!" What followed was an hour of attrition. Bravo Squad directed the defense like maestros in a symphony of controlled chaos. Every breach was met with cold steel and hotter fire. Every advance was tracked, predicted, and countered, and yet the enemy kept coming. Tran was nearly overrun at the north barricade before McClure arrived with a .50 cal Humvee mount and stitched fire into the charging SS unit. Vasquez was grazed by a ricochet while reloading. Henderson personally tackled a sapper trying to breach the bridge supports. The fog burned off by 4 a.m. Dawn cracked the eastern sky. The battlefield lay smoking. Dozens of German bodies marked their failed charge, and Bravo Squad stood, exhausted, bloodied, but alive. Dalton approached Ridley. "You were right. You weren't just reinforcements. You were the fulcrum." Ridley looked toward the sunrise. "We're still not done." Booker stumbled over, holding a new page of decoded German orders. "There's something else. A research site, 20 kilometers northeast. Codename, Eisenschatten." "Translation?" Henderson asked. "Iron Shadow." Ridley's jaw tightened. Caldwell exhaled. Sounds like your war just followed you.
Chapter 15. Into the Wolf's Den, June 7th, 1944, 9:30 hours, local time. The morning air was thick with ash and adrenaline. Isigny was secure, but the calm felt borrowed, like stolen time. Bravo Squad moved quickly, prepping their gear for a recon mission unlike any they'd attempted since arriving in 1944. The coordinates Booker had extracted pointed to a forested area northeast of Corentin, deep behind enemy lines, marked only with a codename, Eisenstadt. Ridley gathered the squad around the hood of their battered Humvee, which had been patched and camouflaged with scraps of Wehrmacht canvas. Caldwell and Dalton stood nearby with their own teams, ready to provide cover as Bravo slipped behind enemy lines. "We go quiet," Ridley said. "Deep insertion. We're not here to win a fight. We're here to find out what Iron Shadow is. If it's a threat to this timeline or ours, we neutralize it. Do we even know what it is?" Vasquez asked, tightening the strap on her tactical vest. Booker tapped the cipher notebook. "The intel is fragmented, but there's something in those woods, an installation. Encrypted transmissions refer to chronometrish material tests. Temporal physics. They're trying to harness time." Tran cocked his rifle. "Then they're playing our game." "Exactly," Ridley said, "and we can't let them win it." By 11 o'clock hours, Bravo Squad had moved off-road, traversing thick underbrush and winding trails. The forest grew denser with every step. Pines loomed high above them, branches filtering the sunlight into narrow shafts of gold. They passed remnants of war. A burned-out ambulance, French resistance symbols carved in a bark, a dead Luftwaffe pilot hanging by his parachute from a tree limb. At 13:07, Booker held up a fist. "Signal spike. Something's active." They crept forward and saw it. Half buried in the earth, camouflaged with netting and branches, a concrete bunker with angled metal doors, strange antennae jutting upward like insect legs. The bunker pulsed with low-frequency hums. There were German guards in black SS uniforms, but not like the others. These wore visors, and some carried strange hybrid weapons, crackling faintly with electricity. "Those aren't standard," Henderson whispered. "That's experimental. They've reverse-engineered something," Booker said. "Maybe even for what we dropped or left behind." "Then we go surgical," Ridley said. Tran, Vasquez, flank left. Henderson, suppress from elevation. Booker, you're with me. We breach. The attack was fast. Tran's knife cut the power to the outer floodlights. Vasquez picked off 2 guards with her suppressed M4. Henderson opened up with a burst from above, sending the remaining sentries into panic. Ridley and Booker moved up, breaching the door with a thermite charge. The entrance blew inward with a hiss and crackle. Inside, the air smelled of ozone and dust. The corridor led to a chamber with glowing machines, curved screens, and one massive contraption. A metallic archway humming with unstable energy. "Jesus Bukir Briatid." It's a prototype temporal gate. "There's more," Tran said, holding up a binder labeled Project Eisenstadt in Torf C. Inside were blueprints. American blueprints. DARPA markings. Dated 2026. "They got these from us," Ridley said. "Or from a future that never should have touched this timeline." Alarms blared. Red lights spun. "We're compromised," Vasquez called. "Multiple contacts inbound. Plant charges. We blow this entire site," Ridley ordered. The squad moved fast. Explosives were placed on generators, servers, and the temporal arch. Booker downloaded what he could. A firefight broke out at the main corridor, Henderson covering the retreat with his LMG while Tran triggered remote detonators. As the squad fled the facility, the first explosions roared. Fire blossomed into the forest sky. The arch collapsed inward, warping like a dying star. They regrouped a kilometer away, breathing hard. Ridley looked back toward the rising smoke. They were close. Closer than they ever should have been. Booker held up a scorched hard drive. "We got data, but I don't think this is over." "No," Ridley said. "This was just the intro." Chapter 16. The remnants of Eisenstadt burned behind them. but the implications of what they had uncovered burned hotter still. Bravo Squad returned to Isigny under cover of evening, their uniforms streaked with mud, soot, and blood. The townspeople, those who had begun trickling back after the battle, watched them with a blend of fear and reverence. These weren't ordinary American soldiers. The gear, the precision, the silent command they carried, it was alien even to their allied brothers. They had become legends in less than 2 days. Ridley made his way to the makeshift command post set up in what used to be a church rectory. Caldwell and Dalton were there, poring over updated movement reports. When Ridley stepped in, both men looked up immediately. "You found it," Caldwell said. It wasn't a question. Ridley nodded. "We destroyed it, but they were closer than we imagined." Booker stepped forward, holding the charred hard drive. "We have their plans, partial files, temporal calculations, some blueprints with DARPA signatures. This wasn't theory, it was implementation." Dalton looked stunned. "You mean they were testing?" Ridley confirmed. "They didn't have full control, but they weren't far off." Caldwell paced. "And if they succeeded, they could change the outcome of the war. Maybe more." Night fell. Ridley stood outside the command post, watching as Vasquez instructed 2 young GIs on suppressor fitting for their carbines. Henderson sat near a fire with a group of British commandos, recounting their breaching of the bunker. Laughter bubbled up, strained but real. Even here, even now, there was still room for levity. Booker approached with a grim expression. "The data confirms it. The Nazis weren't working alone. There are references to an entity called Zirkel, the Circle. It's not German intelligence, more like a transnational cabal, and one of the files lists a date." Ridley narrowed his eyes. "When?" "June 10th. 3 days from now. Something called Operation Nexus. They plan to initiate a synchronized energy discharge at a site nearby you. It aligns with a full lunar phase." "A second gate?" Ridley asked. "Or something worse?" At 0200 hours, Bravo Squad held a private meeting in the attic of a ruined bakery. They laid out everything. The decrypted files, tactical maps, energy readings from Booker's hacked sensor rig. Vasquez, never one to flinch, looked uneasy. "This is bigger than a tech edge. If they're messing with time, they could erase everything. Rewrite it. Maybe even loop it until they get it right." Henderson slammed a fist down. "Then we don't give them the chance." Tran, who had said little, spoke quietly. "We're not just soldiers anymore. We're a safeguard against something humanity isn't ready to understand." Ridley looked at them all. "We hit by you before the 10th. We find Operation Nexus. We shut it down. For good." There was no debate, no vote. They had accepted their place, not just in this war, but in the preservation of history itself. Chapter 17. A thin mist blanketed the French countryside as Bravo Squad rolled out in silence. The Humvee's engine was barely louder than a growl, its frame disguised beneath tarp and netting. Behind them, Isigny faded into memory, just another ghost town caught in the crucible of war. Ahead, Bayou loomed, a medieval city turned crucible of fate. Booker rode shotgun, eyes scanning his modified tablet. "I've tracked a burst of encrypted signals from a farmstead 10 clicks north of Bayou. Looks like pre-op traffic. If Nexus is real, they're staging nearby." "Then we hit the farm first," Ridley replied. Intel before fire. The drive was tense. Fields flashed past, scattered with corpses of war. Burned-out panzers, civilian carts overturned in ditches, abandoned bicycles still upright. They saw no one alive. Near midday, they dismounted and approached the farm on foot. Henderson took point with Booker, while Vasquez and Tran circled wide. It looked abandoned. A stone farmhouse with shuttered windows. But Booker's readouts told a different story. "Thermal says we've got 6 heat signatures, 2 on patrol outside. For inside," Ridley signaled. The approach was textbook. Tran dropped the outer sentries with tranquilizers. Vasquez breached the rear. Henderson cleared the upper floor, while Ridley and Booker swept the main room. Inside, they found a temporary command post, maps, charts, radio logs, and a half-disassembled pulse generator on a metal table. Booker's face darkened. This isn't just prep. This was Phase 1. He held up a schematic, a device far more complex than anything they had seen at Eisenstadt. It's mobile, it's compact, and it can be detonated remotely. A portable gate? Ridley asked. Maybe. Or a bomb that tears space-time instead of terrain. They secured what they could and destroyed the rest. The prisoners, scientists, not soldiers, were left bound for Allied command to collect. The road to Bayeux was blocked. German patrols, makeshift barricades, and one particularly stubborn anti-tank gun crew gave them a running firefight through the hedgerows. At dusk, they found refuge in a crumbled abbey. There, Ridley laid out the plan. Nexus goes live in 2 days. We have partial coordinates, enough to pinpoint the facility. It's beneath Bayeux, Booker added. Old catacombs, Roman foundation, perfect insulation for a temporal experiment. Vasquez leaned against a crumbling wall. We going in loud or quiet? Ridley didn't hesitate. Both. We breach the outer facility in stealth. If Nexus is active, we destroy it before activation. What if it's already running? Tran asked. Ridley met his eyes. Then we shut it down, even if it means going with it. Silence settled over the abbey. Each of them knew what they were really saying. They weren't just trying to win a battle. They were trying to save a timeline. Their timeline. Chapter 18. The ancient city of Bayeux loomed under a shroud of fog and gunpowder. Moonlight filtered through shattered rooftops and danced across broken cobblestones. Bravo Squad had infiltrated the city's outskirts at twilight, slipping between bombed-out homes and back alleys like wraiths. They had 1 day left, one chance to stop Operation Nexus. The entrance to the catacombs was hidden beneath the ruins of an old chapel, once sacred, now twisted by war. Ridley ran a gloved hand across the stone altar. Booker checked the coordinates. This is it, 2 meters east, then down. Vasquez and Tran levered aside the shattered altar stone, revealing a rusted grate embedded in the floor. Henderson opened it with a crowbar. Cold, musty air wafted up from below, centuries of dust, decay, and secrecy. They descended one by one, weapons ready, helmets equipped with low-light optics. The passage narrowed into a labyrinth of carved stone and tangled roots. Bones, long buried, crunched beneath their boots. Booker whispered, "These tunnels predate Napoleon, maybe even the Romans. Perfect place to hide something unnatural." 2 levels below, they encountered resistance. SS guards, but not regular infantry. These were experimental armor, light exo-rigs powered by what looked like jury-rig batteries. Their rifles were fitted with hybrid scopes and unfamiliar canisters. "Contact front," Vasquez whispered. Ridley raised his fist. Silent takedown. Tran ghosted into the shadows. One guard dropped with a blade across the throat. Henderson used a garrote wire. Vasquez planted a sensor node on the corridor wall, feeding real-time schematics into Booker's rig. Facility is half a click ahead. Shielded chamber, power surging. Whatever Nexus is, it's alive. They moved forward, past tangled wiring and glowing cables embedded into stone. Archaic tunes lined the walls, now used as supports for high-tech infrastructure. It was grotesque. Old world and future horror stitched together. At 23:30, they reached the chamber. It wasn't a room. It was a vault, a circular chasm with scaffolding along the walls. In the center, a massive cylindrical core suspended by magnetic fields. Inside the core, a vortex, time itself, folding like liquid metal, suspended in flux. Booker's voice trembled. They've stabilized a singularity. Nearby consoles flickered in both German and broken English. Commands ran automatically. Countdown initiated. 23:31:07. 30 minutes to detonation, Ridley said. This thing isn't a gate. It's a reset button. Tran studied the wiring. If they detonate it here, they'll wipe out a temporal radius of who knows how far. Maybe the entire Allied advance. Maybe Normandy itself. And rewrite history with themselves at the top, Vasquez added. They gotta work. Henderson and Ridley placed charges around the generator conduits. Booker interfaced with the core. I can slow the countdown, not stop it. We have to destroy it. Alarms blared. Reinforcements were inbound. Dozens of footsteps echoed from tunnels above. Tran, Vasquez, defensive perimeter. We buy time. The fight was brutal. German troops stormed in, some wielding energy rifles, some screaming fanatics with shock gloves. Tran's knife flashed like lightning. Vasquez dropped a dozen with grenades and precise bursts. Henderson was wounded, shoulder grazed, still firing. 23:52:01. Booker yelled, "Charges armed." 15 seconds to withdrawal. "Move!" Ridley shouted. They ran, up through the tunnels, through dust and smoke. They hit the surface as the world behind them exploded. The earth shook. A column of white light pierced the sky and then imploded into silence. They collapsed in a side street, coughing, bleeding, hearts pounding. And then it was quiet. Booker looked up. "It's gone." Ridley sat back against the stone wall. "We stopped it." But the question remained. For how long? Chapter 19. The light of dawn crept over the smoking ruins of Bayou. Bravo squad huddled in the shell of a collapsed bakery, catching their breath, treating wounds, and quietly questioning the meaning of survival. They had won, but what had they changed? Booker crouched beside his tablet, scrolling through encrypted files salvaged from the facility. The core's destruction severed whatever temporal conduit they had opened. There's no residual activity, but there's chatter. Someone's still transmitting. Someone survived. Ridley sipped from his canteen, gaze fixed on the eastern horizon. Then we're not done. Where's the signal coming from? Hard to say. It's bouncing off Allied frequencies. Someone's piggybacking our tech, masking their origin. Best guess, it's mobile. Tran tightened the bandage on Henderson's shoulder. What if it's not a device? What if it's a person? Everyone looked at him. Vasquez frowned. A defector? Or a plant? Henderson added. Someone who came through the gate. Maybe even with us. Booker's expression darkened. We accounted for everyone. No one's missing from a squad. Ridley nodded slowly. But what about outside the squad? Locals? Allies? Someone who wasn't supposed to be here, but suddenly is. The squad moved out cautiously. Bayou was under Allied control, but paranoia hung in the air like the fog. They spoke with the Canadian Signals officer stationed at the cathedral, who confirmed unexplained radio interference over the last 24 hours. "It's not Kraut Tech," he said. "We've seen their frequencies. This is clean, precise, American, maybe better." Booker patched into the field antenna and triangulated the source. A signal bouncing between Allied command posts, feeding information upstream, but never downstream. Ridley's eyes narrowed. It's intelligence gathering. Vasquez checked a rifle. "We're being watched." By 11:00. The trail led them to a convoy depot north of the town, where supply trucks and captured German vehicles were parked in rows. One truck was newer than the rest, too clean. Its license plate bore no mud, and its tires had fresh treads. Booker scanned the interior through the window. Thermal says one occupant. Breathing slow, probably sleeping. Tran approached from the flank, peeking through the canvas. Not sleeping, waiting. Ridley yanked the tarp aside. Inside was a man in a tan jumpsuit, hands resting calmly on his knees, eyes open. His features were distinctly American, but subtly wrong, too symmetrical, too smooth. A patch on his shoulder bore no flag, only a stylized hourglass insignia. "Hello," the man said with eerie calm. "I wonder when you'd find me." Ridley aimed his rifle. "Who are you?" "Field Operative Alton Rice. Temporal Intervention Division. I'm from your future, but not your timeline." The squad froze. Rice continued. "My mission was to observe Operation Nexus and prevent contamination. But your arrival altered the sequence. You succeeded, which means I failed. Why transmit Allied intel?" Booker demanded. "To maintain continuity. Your actions distorted the predicted chain. I was trying to stabilize the arc, but it's collapsing faster than expected. The Nexus wasn't the only gate." Ridley stepped closer. "How many are there?" Rice looked up. 3 confirmed. One is buried in the Carpathians. One in the Pacific. The last is in orbit.
Chapter 20. There was no time to debate. Bravo Squad had faced impossible odds since the moment they were pulled through time, but now they were tasked with something even less comprehensible, reaching orbit in 1944. Inside a commandeered Quonset hut at the edge of the Allied command sector, Ridley sat with Rice, Booker, and Vasquez, maps and schematics laid out before them. The tension in the air was electric. "There's a launch system hidden in northern Germany," Rice explained. "It was developed under a program called Himmelsbruch, Skybridge. The Nazis didn't have the tech to make it work, but someone gave it to them. The same someone who gave them pieces of the Nexus prototype." "You're saying we let them build a spaceship?" Vasquez asked. Rice shook his head. "Not exactly. It's a suborbital delivery platform, a hybrid of V-2 rocket tech and time displacement theories. It only launches once. But what it delivers is worse than a nuke." Booker flipped through Rice's notes. "An orbital gate. If it stabilizes, it creates a permanent corridor through time and space. Then they can send through entire battalions," Ridley muttered. "From any point in history. Or the future." Rice nodded. "The gate is already assembled. We have 72 hours at most before the final ignition. Once active, there's no turning back." By midday, Bravo Squad was en route to a covert airfield near Cannes. Rice had pulled strings with Allied command, none of whom believed a word of the time travel claims but were willing to provide air transport if it meant hitting another German superweapon. The C-47 rumbled as it soared over occupied territory. Ridley stared at the clouds, wondering if they'd hold the weight of what came next. Booker prepped field mods for their gear. Tran quietly inspected the special payload they carried, a compact quantum disruptor Rice had brought with him. Its purpose was simple: destroy the temporal matrix at the core of the gate. "Think it'll work?" Henderson asked. Rice didn't hesitate. "It has to." On June 12 at 3:19, they parachuted into the Harz Mountains. The drop zone was silent, the forest unnervingly still. They moved in 2x2 through mist and pine, guided by Rice's scanner. The launch site was hidden beneath a plateau, massive steel doors buried under dirt and concrete. Booker hacked the access panel while Tran rigged charges just in case. Inside, they discovered a vast chamber dominated by scaffolding and an upright missile twice the size of any V-2. Strapped along its hull, strange antennae and glowing coils. "This is it," Rice whispered. "They call it Thor's Key." Guards swarmed as the team moved in. Tran and Vasquez laid down suppressive fire. Booker and Henderson scrambled up scaffolding to plant disruptor charges. Ridley and Rice reached the launch control chamber, confronting a German officer dressed in black leather and silver insignia. His eyes gleamed unnaturally. "You are too late," the officer said. "The gate has opened." A pulse of energy surged through the room. Lights flickered. Somewhere above, space tore like cloth. But Booker triggered the disruptor. The weapon hummed, pulsed, then detonated with a ripple of violet light. The missile crumpled inward like a dying star. The gate collapsed. The launch gantry shattered. Bravo Squad was thrown from the platform by the shockwave. When they came to, the mountain was quiet. No rocket. No gate. Just sky. Rice helped Ridley to his feet. "We bought time. But not forever." Ridley looked up at the stars, then at his team. "Then we keep fighting. Across every battlefield. Every timeline." He chambered around. "We're not done yet." Chapter 21. The sky over the Harz Mountains was still scorched from the collapse of the orbital gate. But the world had not ended, not yet. Bravo Squad regrouped at a resistance safe house in a village nestled deep within the Thuringian forest. The house had once been a hunting lodge, now repurposed as a command outpost by French Maquis fighters and a handful of British SOE operatives. The fireplace crackled with wet wood as Ridley and Rice studied what remained of the enemy's documentation. They knew it was a one-way gamble, Rice said, tapping a scorched folder marked Project Sci-Fi. If the gate opened for even 5 minutes, they could inject operatives, tech, maybe weapons into any point on Earth's timeline. We stopped the delivery. But not the theory. Meaning they'll try again, Ridley said grimly. Or someone else will. Booker entered the room, eyes shadowed from exhaustion. New intel. Allied HQ intercepted a coded broadcast, originating from a location in Vienna. Same spectral noise as Nexus and Skybridge. Someone's rebuilding. Underground. Already? Vasquez said from the doorway, cradling her rifle. They waste no time. Rice nodded. They never stopped. Every gate we've closed is just a delay. We've been fighting their vanguard. The architects are still out there. At dawn, the squad loaded into a commandeered Opel Blitz truck, camouflaged under civilian tarp. The journey to Austria would take 2 days of evasive travel through ravaged countryside, dodging patrols, and avoiding Allied columns wary of irregular uniforms and unrecognized credentials. On the road, the conversation grew philosophical. Henderson asked the question that had hung in the air since their first firefight in 1944. Do we even get home after this? No one answered right away. Tran finally broke the silence. We're already ghosts. We just haven't faded yet. Speak for yourself, Vasquez smirked, lighting a cigarette. I'm planning to retire on a tropical beach, with or without a timeline. Laughter softened the mood, if only briefly. On June 15, they reached the outskirts of Vienna. The city still bore scars from early air raids, but much of its classical core stood untouched. The suspected location was beneath the Natural History Museum, an odd place for a time weapon. Public building, thick walls, Roman catacombs beneath, Rice explained. Perfect cover. And neutral territory, technically. The Allies aren't pushing this far east yet. Bravo squad slipped into the city under the guise of Red Cross workers. Booker faked credentials. Vasquez spoke fluent German. Rice adjusted his accent and assumed the role of a Swiss observer. The infiltration was silent. At midnight, they entered through a storm drain near the museum's rear garden, slipping past curfews and checkpoints. Booker led the way using a reconfigured sensor device. Signals were faint but consistent. Chapter 21. The sky over the Harz Mountains was still scorched from the collapse of the orbital gate. But the world had not ended, not yet. Bravo squad regrouped at a resistance safe house in a village nestled deep within the Thuringian forest. The house had once been a hunting lodge, now repurposed as a command outpost by French Maquis fighters and a handful of British SOE operatives. The fireplace crackled with wet wood as Ridley and Rice studied what remained of the enemy's documentation. They knew it was a one-way gamble, Rice said, tapping a scorched folder marked Project Sci-Fi. If the gate opened for even 5 minutes, they could inject operatives, tech, maybe weapons into any point on Earth's timeline. We stopped the delivery. But not the theory. Meaning they'll try again, Ridley said grimly. Or someone else will. Booker entered the room, eyes shadowed from exhaustion. New intel. Allied HQ intercepted a coded broadcast, originating from a location in Vienna. Same spectral noise as Nexus and Skybridge. Someone's rebuilding. Underground. Already? Vasquez said from the doorway, cradling her rifle. They waste no time. Rice nodded. They never stopped. Every gate we've closed is just a delay. We've been fighting their vanguard. The architects are still out there. At dawn, the squad loaded into a commandeered Opel Blitz truck, camouflaged under civilian tarp. The journey to Austria would take 2 days of evasive travel through ravaged countryside, dodging patrols, and avoiding Allied columns wary of irregular uniforms and unrecognized credentials. On the road, the conversation grew philosophical. Henderson asked the question that had hung in the air since their first firefight in 1944. Do we even get home after this? No one answered right away. Tran finally broke the silence. We're already ghosts. We just haven't faded yet. Speak for yourself, Vasquez smirked, lighting a cigarette. I'm planning to retire on a tropical beach, with or without a timeline. Laughter softened the mood, if only briefly. On June 15, they reached the outskirts of Vienna. The city still bore scars from early air raids, but much of its classical core stood untouched. The suspected location was beneath the Natural History Museum, an odd place for a time weapon. Public building, thick walls, Roman catacombs beneath, Rice explained. Perfect cover. And neutral territory, technically. The Allies aren't pushing this far east yet. Bravo Squad slipped into the city under the guise of Red Cross workers. Booker faked credentials. Vasquez spoke fluent German. Rice adjusted his accent and assumed the role of a Swiss observer. The infiltration was silent. At midnight, they entered through a storm drain near the museum's rear garden, slipping past curfews and checkpoints. Booker led the way using a reconfigured sensor device. Signals were faint but consistent. Chapter 22. The safe house they found on the southern outskirts of Vienna was barely more than a cellar beneath a collapsed Baroque villa. But it was dry, defensible, and most importantly, discreet. Rice set up a signal-dampening perimeter using scavenged tech from the hidden lab. Consortium 7's network won't find us here. At least, not immediately. Ridley stood at the top of the stairs, staring out into the dim cityscape. We have 11 days until he wakes up. That clock started when we found the lab. Booker sat cross-legged, reviewing the cryocore logs on his rig. Whoever put him there encrypted the neural pathways. It's not just a freezer. It's a failsafe. He's a message. A warning. Or a weapon. Do we wake him early? Vasquez asked, cleaning her rifle. Or destroy the pod? Ridley didn't answer. Tran finally said what no one else dared to. What if he's not you? Not exactly you. Rice looked up from a map of Vienna. That's a very real possibility. Divergent timelines often result in paradoxical constructs, same person, different path. If Consortium 7 molded this Ridley, we're dealing with someone who's seen more than us. Maybe someone who's stopped questioning ends and means. On June 17, they broke back into the museum. The pod still rested behind its blast-sealed chamber. The countdown read, 9 days, 13 hours, 02 minutes. Booker and Rice debated rigging a bypass. We could wake him now, Rice said. Control the interaction. But if he's unstable, Booker countered, we're waking a super soldier with timeline knowledge and potential consortium conditioning. We might not survive that meeting. Ridley stared through the glass. The face was his. Slightly older. Scar above the eyebrow. More lined. Wiser, or simply more burdened. We wait, he finally said. We prepare. Over the next several days, Bravo Squad split their efforts. Booker and Tran focused on decrypting the Consortium 7 files, tracing timelines and anomaly records. Their findings were disturbing, anomalies not just from this war, but from conflicts across the 20th and 21st centuries. Consortium agents were ceding influence. Sometimes tech. Sometimes ideology. They're trying to control history like a stock market, Booker said. Shorting bad regimes. Investing in chaos. Meanwhile, Vasquez and Henderson fortified the area. Tripwires, fallback corridors, escape tunnels. They weren't taking any chances. Rice operated from the cellar like a field commander turned cryptographer. He received a burst transmission on the night of the 20th. His face went pale. They know we're here. The first attack came on the 21st. A strike team in dark armor, insignias burned off, descended through the storm drains. They were silent, efficient, and lethal. Chapter 22. The safe house they found on the southern outskirts of Vienna was barely more than a cellar beneath a collapsed Baroque villa. But it was dry, defensible, and most importantly, discreet. Rice set up a signal-dampening perimeter using scavenged tech from the hidden lab. Consortium 7's network won't find us here. At least, not immediately. Ridley stood at the top of the stairs, staring out into the dim cityscape. We have 11 days until he wakes up. That clock started when we found the lab. Booker sat cross-legged, reviewing the cryocore logs on his rig. Whoever put him there encrypted the neural pathways. It's not just a freezer. It's a failsafe. He's a message. A warning. Or a weapon. Do we wake him early? Vasquez asked, cleaning her rifle. Or destroy the pod? Ridley didn't answer. Tran finally said what no one else dared to. What if he's not you? Not exactly you. Rice looked up from a map of Vienna. That's a very real possibility. Divergent timelines often result in paradoxical constructs, same person, different path. If Consortium 7 molded this Ridley, we're dealing with someone who's seen more than us. Maybe someone who's stopped questioning ends and means. On June 17th, they broke back into the museum. The pod still rested behind its blast-sealed chamber. The countdown read, 9 days, 13 hours, 02 minutes. Booker and Rice debated rigging a bypass. We could wake him now, Rice said. Control the interaction. But if he's unstable, Booker countered, we're waking a super soldier with timeline knowledge and potential consortium conditioning. We might not survive that meeting. Ridley stared through the glass. The face was his. Slightly older. Scar above the eyebrow. More lined. Wiser, or simply more burdened. We wait, he finally said. We prepare. Over the next several days, Bravo Squad split their efforts. Booker and Tran focused on decrypting the Consortium 7 files, tracing timelines and anomaly records. Their findings were disturbing, anomalies not just from this war, but from conflicts across the 20th and 21st centuries. Consortium agents were ceding influence. Sometimes tech. Sometimes ideology. They're trying to control history like a stock market, Booker said. Shorting bad regimes. Investing in chaos. Meanwhile, Vasquez and Henderson fortified the area. Tripwires, fallback corridors, escape tunnels. They weren't taking any chances. Rice operated from the cellar like a field commander turned cryptographer. He received a burst transmission on the night of the 20th. His face went pale. They know we're here. The first attack came on the 21st. A strike team in dark armor, insignias burned off, descended through the storm drains. They were silent, efficient, and lethal. Chapter 23. For a long moment, no one moved. Future Ridley sat on the edge of the cryopod, eyes adjusting to the dim lighting of the underground vault. The air was cold, sterile, electric. Original Ridley lowered his rifle but didn't holster it. You said you're a second chance. Explain. Future Ridley stood, slowly. He moved like a soldier, but with deliberate economy, each motion precise, measured. He glanced around at the team, Vasquez's tight grip on her carbine, Booker's trembling hand on the flash drive, Tran's unwavering stare. Then finally, his eyes locked back on himself. I was activated once before, he said. In a different strand. One where Operation Nexus succeeded. The world burned in slow motion. Consortium 7 didn't just shape history, they erased it and wrote their own. Rice stepped forward. You're from that reality. Part of it, Future Ridley said. I fought them. Lost. I was captured and turned. Reprogrammed. But something in me held out. I sabotaged their core. They froze me in case I ever became useful again. And now. Here I am. Booker's voice cracked. How do we know you're telling the truth? Future Ridley approached the console and entered a string of commands without hesitation. The screen flickered, then displayed footage, images of a shattered Washington, D.C. timelines collapsing, multiple versions of historical figures in brutal conflict. He turned back. "I've seen what happens if we fail. I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to help you finish it." In the hours that followed, the team convened in the safehouse's main cellar. Ridley briefed his future self on everything, from Normandy to Vienna. Consortium 7's play isn't just temporal dominance, Booker summarized. It's meta-historical ownership. They're writing cause and effect backwards. Future Ridley nodded. Then the key isn't to destroy the gates. It's to destroy the Codex. Rice stiffened. The Codex is theoretical. It's real. And it's mobile, Future Ridley said. Think of it as the central processor of all temporal sequencing, an AI core built to calculate risk and orchestrate events across strands. And it's here? Vasquez asked. It will be. In 4 days, a courier team moves it to Prague. That's the last chance to intercept it before it disappears beyond our temporal reach. They made plans. On June 27, Bravo Squad prepared to intercept the Codex convoy. Rice secured travel documentation, Booker rigged EMP pulses into throwable canisters, and Tran scouted the railway lines between Vienna and Prague. Future Ridley took over tactical planning without resistance, his tone firm, his decisions efficient. Original Ridley watched him closely. The final operation was no longer a suicide mission. It was something worse. It was personal. Chapter 24. The hills outside Prague shimmered under the oppressive summer sun. Bravo Squad lay concealed beneath an overgrown hedgerow, eyes fixed on the railway curve below. The rumble of a distant train echoed through the valley, accompanied by the shrill cry of iron brakes. Visual confirmed, Booker whispered into his comm, convoy approaching. 4 cars. Center wagon is sealed, high-grade titanium. That's our Codex. Rice nodded, crouched beside him. If we breach it mid-transit, we risk damaging the core. We hit them during the refueling stop. Future Ridley adjusted the scope on his marksman rifle. ETA 5 minutes. No more delays. Original Ridley gave the signal. Tran and Vasquez flanked left, slipping toward the platform disguised in resistance gear. Booker and Henderson circled the freight yards to cut off any ground reinforcements. Rice remained with Ridley, past and future, directing the strike from the overwatch point. The train screeched to a halt at a dilapidated siding, where a Nazi engineer dismounted to check brake pressure. 2 guards emerged from the center wagon, eyes scanning the area. Tran slipped behind the nearest stack of crates, lifting his silenced sidearm. Vasquez approached the engineer, posing as a local courier. The man frowned, just in time to see her fist before everything went black. Shots cracked across the yard. Ridley and his future self dropped 2 sentries from 300 meters. Booker disabled the secondary switch tracks with a remote detonator. Go! Rice shouted. Tran and Vasquez breached the wagon door with a shaped charge. The explosion was precise, loud enough to breach, quiet enough to avoid chain reaction. Smoke billowed. Inside the titanium container was a single crate, suspended by shock absorbers. Lights blinked on its surface. A display counted down. 14 minutes and 38 seconds, Booker ran in, panting. That's the Codex's encryption cycle. Once it completes, it'll sync with the Vienna array and vanish into a shadow vault. Then we shut it down now, Original Ridley said. Future Ridley approached the console. You don't just shut it down. You have to speak to it. The team stared as he knelt and placed his hand on the interface. Codex 7. Override. Ridley Protocol. A pause. Then the crate spoke. Input recognized. Confirm operator identity, Arf Ridley. Quantum key required. Future Ridley removed a microchip from a pouch sewn into his collar. Where did you get that? Rice demanded. I stole it, Future Ridley said. From Consortium HQ. The night I defected. He inserted the chip. The crate vibrated. The countdown froze. Override accepted. Initiating data purge. Transfer in progress, 17%. Now we hold the line, Vasquez growled, taking up a position by the train door. Reinforcements arrived moments later, black armored operatives, moving like ghosts, firing suppressed rounds. Tran dropped 3 in quick succession. Henderson was clipped but kept firing. Booker shielded the Codex core with his body. Transfer, 54%. Rice tossed an EMP grenade at an approaching squad. Buy us 30 more seconds. Original Ridley manned a mounted MG from a captured jeep and let loose, mowing down a column advancing through the trees. Transfer, 92%. 93%. 94%. A final explosion rocked the siding as Future Ridley collapsed from a shoulder wound, blood soaking through his vest. Transfer complete. Encryption neutralized. System wipe initiated. The crate's light dimmed. The Codex was dead. Ridley knelt beside his future self. You did it, he said. Future Ridley smiled faintly. I was always meant to. He coughed, blood on his lips. Now it's your war to finish. Then he closed his eyes. Bravo Squad exfiltrated under darkness, taking the crate's remains and Rice's backup copy of the Codex logs. They had won, but the cost, once again, was real. And the enemy was still out there. Chapter 25, Final Orders, July 1, 1944, for 32 hours, local time, the remnants of dawn spilled across the Bohemian hills as Bravo Squad moved toward the extraction point. The night had passed without rest. They had lost a soldier, one of themselves, and destroyed the most dangerous piece of technology ever conceived. But the mission wasn't over. They rendezvoused with a British SOE liaison at a secluded farmhouse near the Moldau River. The man was grim-faced and silent, offering transport, new orders, and a bottle of scotch in quiet salute. I don't understand what you did, he admitted, but London says the timelines shifted. Certain codes in Bletchley disappeared. Photos blinked out of existence. Something changed. Booker nodded. That's the idea. Rice handed over a secured case with the last Codex remnants. You're the courier now. Burn this if you're ever captured. No negotiation. The agent gave a single nod and drove off into the mist. In the barn, Bravo Squad reviewed their situation. Future Ridley said the Codex was just one node, Rice said. There's more. Nexus. Skybridge. Eisenstatten. The orbital gate. All test runs. But the consortium's true power lies in temporal decentralization. Hidden facilities. Shadow wars. We cut one head off, Vasquez said. We know what comes next. Multiple heads, Ridley corrected. We're Hydra hunting now. Tran placed a fresh magazine into his rifle. So where's the next serpent? Booker pulled up decrypted data from the Codex before its purge. I found something. A signal. Weak. Fragmented. But consistent. It's bouncing across old Roman architecture sites. Italy. Tunisia. Even Egypt. Rice blinked. It's a lattice. A what? Henderson asked. A chronoresonance lattice. A massive temporal net using electromagnetic bleed-off through ancient conductive stone. They're building something, under our feet. Then we go underground, Ridley said. Literally. 3 days later, Bravo Squad parachuted into Sardinia under cover of darkness. A Roman temple ruin served as their target. Beneath it, they uncovered carved tunnels filled with wiring far too advanced for 1944. They encountered a group of locals, resistance fighters who'd seen flashes of light at night, equipment humming without power sources. One old woman spoke of metal ghosts stealing stone from sacred grounds. Deep inside the ruins, Bravo Squad discovered another temporal core, smaller, incomplete, but active. It pulsed in sync with a signal from Tunisia. Rice shook his head. It's a relay hub. They're building a network strong enough to rewrite regional timelines. Not one gate. Many. Ridley looked around at the ancient walls and glowing conduits. They're rewriting history from its very roots. And it's our job, Vasquez said, to pull those roots out. They set the charges. As they climbed out of the tunnels, explosions shook the hillside. Flames licked into the sky, and 1,000 years of history cracked open. Ridley looked back at the smoke rising into the stars. Final orders, he muttered. Tran raised an eyebrow. From who? Ridley gave a small, grim smile. From us. Chapter 26, The Carthage Convergence, July 5, 1944, 2:11 hours, local time. Night cloaked the ruins of ancient Carthage, broken marble columns casting elongated shadows over the sand. Bravo Squad moved like wraiths among them, silent, watchful, every step a calculated risk. Their boots touched ground that bore the memory of centuries, but it was what pulsed beneath the ruins that worried Ridley most. Rice adjusted his sensor device. Same frequency as Sardinia. Amplified. They're transmitting from inside the Bursa Hill complex. Another relay? Vasquez asked. More than that, Rice replied. The signal density suggests a hub. This could be their Central African control point. They reached the edge of a crumbling archway that once served as a temple gate. Below it, hidden behind scrub brush and debris, they uncovered a concealed elevator platform, new, stainless steel, anachronistic among the ruins. Booker activated the interface. They're arrogant, leaving this open. Or confident we won't come. The elevator descended into darkness. What lay beneath was no less than astonishing, a vast underground chamber, carved from sandstone and reinforced with modern alloys. Banks of flickering consoles lined the walls, and a series of glass columns pulsed with energy. Welcome to the convergence, Rice muttered. The air buzzed with electricity and ozone. Tran stepped forward and unslung a coil of det cord. No guards? Henderson asked, rifle raised. Booker frowned. Not necessary. This place is automated. They followed the pulsing light deeper into the labyrinth, eventually arriving at a core chamber with a high-resolution projection hovering above the floor, an animated model of the Mediterranean basin, webbed with glowing nodes. Look at the lines, Ridley said. They're not just using sights. They're channeling resonance across ley lines, geomagnetic vectors. Vasquez squinted. Tunisia to Egypt. Sicily to Athens. It's all linked. Rice confirmed with a scan. It's not just temporal. It's spatial, too. If activated, this could warp entire regions back to predetermined eras, by force. Like restoring a backup, Booker added. Rewriting civilization to suit their narrative. Not on our watch, Ridley said. They set charges throughout the convergence chamber. Tran and Vasquez split off to destroy uplink nodes. Booker installed a timed virus into the command grid, scrambling coordination across the lattice. But just as they finished, the chamber shuddered. Movement above, Henderson reported. Incoming, fast. The elevator platform returned. On it, a figure clad in black armor descended, taller than a man, with a mirrored helmet and digitized voice. You are not authorized to be here, the voice declared. You threaten the stability of optimized outcomes. Ridley raised his rifle. We're the correction. The figure stepped forward. Your variables. And variables are eliminated. Gunfire erupted. The fight was brutal. The operative's armor deflected rounds until Vasquez flanked and drove a blade under the chin plate. Sparks flew, and the figure collapsed in a heap of smoldering circuits. Cybernetic, Rice confirmed, examining the remains. Not entirely human. Probably consortium built. Which means they're running out of humans willing to do their bidding, Ridley muttered. They triggered the detonation sequence and fled through an emergency tunnel. Behind them, the convergence chamber imploded in a cyclone of fire and fractured time. Colors warped. Echoes of voices not yet born whispered along the walls, above ground, as they surfaced through a forgotten tomb. The dawn crested over the horizon. Carthage smoldered. We crippled the net, Rice said. But they'll adapt. They always do. Ridley scanned the horizon. Then we move faster. Hit the next site before they rebuild. Booker checked his comms. Athens is already pulsing. Tran cracked his neck. Next stop, Olympus. Chapter 27, Athens lay under a blanket of clouds, moonlight reflecting off the Parthenon's broken columns. The ruins stood like sentinels, hollow-eyed with history. Bravo squad moved in low and silent, parachuting onto Mount Lycabettus and navigating toward their insertion point with practiced precision. Booker keyed his comm signal. Triangulation confirmed. The pulse is coming from the Acropolis. Rice stared up at the glowing skyline. It makes sense. High-altitude marble foundation, full line of sight over ancient ley lines. Ideal for a node relay. Consortium 7's not just rewriting history, Ridley said. They're choosing which myths become fact. They moved through ancient catacombs beneath the Acropolis, spaces few locals even knew existed. Hidden among the ruins were signs of tampering, smooth concrete, titanium brackets, cables snaking like vines into the depths. Booker accessed a side terminal. Encrypted protocols matched those from Carthage and Sardinia. Uplink to central grid confirmed. A low hum grew louder the deeper they descended. They found themselves in a massive subterranean hull carved into the bedrock of the ancient city. At its center, a circular pedestal pulsed with light, surrounded by 6 towering statues, replicas of Greek gods, mocking mythology. Vasquez muttered. No, Rice said darkly. Weaponizing it. Atop the central pedestal, a device resembling a gear-shaped obelisk, humming with unstable energy. Floating symbols shimmered above it, Greek, Latin, and quantum code fused into a visual symphony. Booker studied it. It's a recompiler. This isn't just a broadcast relay, it's a narrative imposition engine. They're rewriting cultural foundations to legitimize their authority. Henderson frowned. You mean, they're going to make people remember different wars? Worse, Rice said. They'll never know the difference. Suddenly, the statues came to life, revealing themselves as fully mechanical sentinels, encoded with ancient aesthetics but armed with modern AI targeting systems. Contact. Tran shouted, diving behind cover. Laser-guided spears launched from Artemis and Apollo. Vasquez took out Athena with a short burst to the knee joint. Booker unleashed an EMP wave, scrambling Ares long enough for Ridley to blow its core. Rice activated a disruptor beam directly into the device's central matrix. It's resisting shutdown. Auto-repair protocols online. Then we don't shut it down, Ridley growled. We bury it. They overloaded the energy capacitors around the pedestal, stacking detonation charges while Henderson laid suppressive fire. As the countdown ticked, the obelisk projected a final phrase, timeline selected, Imperium ex machina, commencing overwrite. Nope, Booker snarled, slamming his palm on the final trigger. The entire chamber erupted in white-hot plasma. Echoes of ancient voices screamed across frequencies no ear could register. The ground shook as the Acropolis shuddered above them. They escaped through a ventilation shaft used during the German occupation. Behind them, the node collapsed inward, burying centuries and the consortium's engine in eternal stone. From their vantage point on the Nix, Bravo squad watched the dust settle over the Athenian skyline. 3 hubs down, Rice said. 2 left. Cairo and Jerusalem. And 1 master key still in the wild, Ridley added. Booker checked the gear inventory. We're running low on charges and time. Then we adapt, Ridley said, eyes fixed eastward. We improvise. And we finish this. Chapter 28, Cairo wasn't sleeping. The city buzzed with wartime tension, British troops patrolled the streets, Allied convoys rolled through narrow alleys, and the distant glow of lanterns flickered like starlight across rooftops. Beneath it all, invisible to the bustling world above, the consortium had buried its deepest secrets. Bravo Squad arrived via an underground railway once used by Ottoman smugglers, emerging through a service hatch beneath the citadel of Saladin. The air was thick with heat and history. Dust motes danced in the flashlight beams as they descended into limestone catacombs. Signal density is strong, Rice whispered. We're close. Very close. Tran scanned the wall carvings. These aren't Egyptian hieroglyphs. They're hybrid glyphs, Phoenician syntax, Roman framing. They're stitching together civilizations. Booker traced a symbol. Timeline keys. They're encoding myth as data. Programming belief. The catacombs opened into a hidden cavern beneath the mosque foundations. There, nestled in the stone, stood an obsidian monolith, taller than any they'd seen. Runes pulsed across its surface in rhythmic, hypnotic patterns. At its base, an array of mechanical arms swiveled in anticipation, constructing microdrones from thin air. Auto manufacturing, Booker said. It's self-replicating. A seed node. Vasquez raised her rifle. Then we end it before it sprouts. Before they could act, floodlights ignited from above. Dozens of armored figures descended by tether from concealed ceiling panels, consortium commandos with sleek, reflective visors and silent weapons. Ambush. Tran shouted, diving behind an ancient pillar. Gunfire erupted. Ridley and Henderson returned fire from the flank while Rice launched a sonic disruption pulse. The first wave of operatives fell, but more replaced them. Then the monolith spoke. Phase node activated. Local overwrite commencing. Cultural divergence, preaxial symmetry. Subjective epoch, ascension. Booker's eyes widened. They're trying to erase every unapproved idea that came after the Bronze Age. Reinventing consciousness. Not if we vaporize them first, Ridley said. The team broke through enemy lines, moving toward the monolith's base. Vasquez took a round to the shoulder but kept moving. Booker crawled through shattered debris to reach the primary control node. I need 30 seconds. He called. Rice overcharged his pulse cannon and fired into the drone array, halting the replication cycle. Tran took down a strike leader with a combat knife and grenaded the upper scaffolds. As Booker's override reached 98%, the monolith retaliated, projecting psychoacoustic waves that caused hallucinations and memory confusion. Ridley's vision warped. He saw himself fighting in desert armor, shouting in a language he didn't know. But then Vasquez shouted through the noise, grounding him. Now, Booker. He slammed the final keystroke. Override complete. Monolith destabilizing. The obsidian tower cracked down the middle, and from within, a blinding light surged upward, vaporizing the ceiling. Screams, not human, rattled the walls. Go. Rice barked. They ran as the catacombs collapsed. Heat and static chased them through crumbling tunnels. The earth roared. They emerged into the pre-dawn light outside the citadel, bruised, bloodied, but alive. Behind them, the mosque shuddered, but stood firm. The node, however, was gone. That's 4, Rice said, panting. Only Jerusalem remains. Ridley looked to the horizon where the first hints of sunrise painted the sky gold. Then that's where we go, he said. Into the lion's den. Chapter 29, Jerusalem glimmered in the distance, a sacred city caught in the crosshairs of time. Bravo Squad approached from the west, disguised in stolen Wehrmacht uniforms. The narrow limestone alleys of the old city were quiet, the air thick with incense and tension. At this hour, even the conflict seemed to hold its breath. Booker checked his uplink scanner. Pulse confirmed. Final node is beneath the Temple Mount. Rice adjusted his headscarf, voice low. A convergence site since the dawn of monotheism. If Consortium 7 activates the Jerusalem node, they'll overwrite the very foundations of spiritual memory. Ridley glanced toward the dome above them. Then we end it here. They descended through a hidden passage behind an ancient mihrab, accessed with schematics stolen in Cairo. Underneath the city's heart, they entered a chamber that defied logic, obsidian walls inscribed with text from every holy book, flickering between alphabets like a divine slideshow. Tran ran his hand along a glowing inscription. They're not just reprogramming culture. They're rewriting identity. The central structure loomed ahead, a floating cube, suspended in a lattice of magnetic beams. Within it spun a core of light, alive, aware, watching. This is the source node, Rice said. It's linked to every previous location. Destroy it, and we sever their hold. Fail, and the entire historical lattice folds. Suddenly, alarms blared. A voice echoed from above, "You were never meant to come this far." An armored figure descended, clad in black, bearing the insignia of Consortium 7. But this one removed their helmet. It was another Ridley, older. Hardened. Scarred. "I'm the fail-safe," he said. "A fragment left behind in case all else failed. And now, I have to stop you." "Another version of me?" Ridley asked. "You were compromised." "I wasn't. I'm here to protect the timeline that works." Booker raised his weapon. "That's not your call." The chamber erupted in chaos. The two Ridleys fought in brutal hand-to-hand, striking with mirrored precision. Henderson and Vasquez engaged a sudden wave of defense drones. Rice hacked the cube's containment field, override in progress. 20%, Tran fired at the beam emitters, buying Rice time. Booker uploaded a virus that looped the cube's internal command stream, 50%, the elder Ridley gained the upper hand, pinning his younger self. "You don't understand the cost of chaos," he growled. "I do," Ridley gasped, "but I also understand freedom." He headbutted his older self, grabbed a shattered drone arm, and drove it through the man's chest. The failsafe Ridley fell to the floor, whispering, "Don't waste it." 75%, the cube began to shake violently. Light pulsed in uneven rhythms, the air thick with static and voices from untold histories. 99%. 100%. Override complete. Source node offline. The cube imploded, folding in on itself with a scream that echoed across all frequencies. Bravo Squad staggered out of the ruins just as the sun began to rise over the Mount of Olives. The sky seemed lighter. Cleaner. History had stopped mutating. Rice sat on a nearby step, head in hands. "We did it. We actually did it." Booker collapsed beside him. "But at what cost? How many versions of us died to make this one real?" Ridley stood in silence, staring at the place where his other self had fallen. "Enough to make sure we remember it mattered." Tran nodded. Iron Shadow, mission complete. The team watched the new dawn break across a world they had saved, one history at a time. Epilogue, Shadows of the Future, August 1, 1944 to present day. The war continued, as wars always do, but something had shifted. Somewhere in the depths of MI6 Black Archives, a file labeled Operation Iron Shadow remained sealed, its contents known only to a handful of individuals who dared to believe the impossible. Officially, Bravo Squad never existed. The nodes were never built. Time, as the world knew it, had always followed the same path, but for 6 soldiers who had returned from hell beneath history, the truth was etched into their very bones. London, August 1, 1944, Rice sat across from a Royal Intelligence Director in a candlelit basement beneath Whitehall. A phonograph played something old and sad. He handed over a slim steel case. "These are the remaining schematics," he said. "Everything else has been burned." The director nodded without looking at him. "And the others?" "Scattered. Most went back to their original units. A few didn't make it." The man opened the case and stared at the clean circuitry diagrams. "You understand what we're holding here, Rice?" Rice smiled grimly. "A key to every lock that ever existed. And a reason to throw it away." He stood. "Bury it. Salt the earth. Pretend none of this happened. The world isn't ready. Not yet. As he walked out, the director lit a match and held it over the first page. Berlin, 1945, Vasquez walked through the rubble-strewn ruins of the Reichstag in full U.S. Army uniform. Her orders had shifted, no longer reconnaissance, now recovery. Buried deep in a secret vault beneath the charred ruins, she located an inactive temporal lens once intended for the Nazi atomic program. She detonated the chamber with thermite and slipped away, unseen. Some memories are better left unmade, she whispered. 1953, Nevada Proving Grounds. Booker, now graying at the temples, worked under an assumed name within a Department of Defense research wing. He quietly sabotaged a series of coronal resonance experiments camouflaged under the nuclear testing program. When asked by his superior why the data kept corrupting, he shrugged. Maybe time doesn't like being poked. 1961, Langley, Virginia. Henderson had retired from the army and vanished into the world of spooks and shadows. He'd tracked a consortium resurgence in Southeast Asia, this time hidden within humanitarian efforts. When the operation escalated, he authorized a counteroffensive using untraceable mercenaries. He never gave interviews. Never left photos, but his code name, Ironback, surfaced on a single decrypted radio transmission from Laos in 1965. After that, silence. 1979, Jerusalem. Tran returned to the site of the source node on the 35th anniversary of its destruction. A small brass plaque had been mysteriously installed inside a sealed chamber beneath the Temple Mount. No one claimed responsibility. No one had ever seen it placed. It read, "Here the past was saved, and the future forgiven." 2024, Arlington National Cemetery. A simple headstone bore the name Captain R. Ridley, no rank. No unit. No war. Just a small bronze emblem beneath it, a shadow with wings, cast in iron. On certain anniversaries, flowers appeared. Once, a folded flag. Once, a small black cube, humming softly before going dark. The present day. Merlin Ridley, a cybersecurity analyst for a deep state think tank, stared at a corrupted data string recovered from an old mainframe hidden beneath Geneva. It pulsed like a heartbeat. He ran the code through every known cipher. The result, an AI-generated phrase embedded in audio form. History is memory rendered stable. Beware those who would rewrite it. Merlin sat back in his chair, disturbed by the name at the end of the log file. Ridley. And in the static of his headset, just barely, he thought he heard boots in the sand.